Hello everyone. Welcome to Sleepcrime. Thanks for being here with me tonight. I know many of you like to listen to these stories as you wind down, so before you drift off, feel free to leave a comment and let me know where you're listening from. And if you enjoy the storytelling, liking the video or subscribing really helps. What you're about to hear is a collection of real cases, told calmly and without rush. Each story stands on its own, but they're all shaped by moments where ordinary life quietly changed and something irreversible followed. Get comfortable. There's nowhere else you need to be tonight. Story 1. They bring the child in quietly. 7 years old. Rachel Watts. Hours earlier, she had been found walking alone along a roadside. No shoes. No clothes where they should have been. Bruises already darkening her skin. By the time she's seated now, adults surround her, trying not to move too fast, trying not to say the wrong thing. Her mother sits nearby, close enough to reach her, far enough to follow instructions. Police have already warned her, don't react. Don't cry. Don't rush toward your child. Any sign of distress could make Rachel retreat into herself, and right now they need her talking. Rachel's legs swing back and forth. She keeps her eyes down. She hasn't done that before. Not like this. She's holding something back. And for the first time, her mother is hearing fragments of what happened, words no parent ever prepares for. Staying still becomes a kind of pain. Rachel's voice is small, uneven. What she says is true, but it isn't everything. When she talks about the back seat of the car, her hands lift without being asked. She presses them over her mouth, then moves them to her neck. She shows instead of explains. Fingers tightening. Pressure. Too much pressure. She says she had to stop herself from making any sound. When asked if it hurt, she nods. Then demonstrates again. Harder this time. The fear underneath her words doesn't fade when she stops speaking. It lingers, because she believes the man who tried to kill her knows where she lives. And there's something else she doesn't know yet. She will see him again. 3 days later, on February 7th, Rachel stands behind glass that only works one way. A mirror. A lineup of men arranged a few steps away. She's told to look carefully, to take her time. Someone here may be the person she saw. What she isn't told is that one of those men has already taken 2 other children's lives. That if she cannot recognize him, he will leave that room and continue. It's strange how much weight ends up on someone that young, without anyone ever saying it out loud. This story didn't begin here. It goes back to 1990, in Whitehawk, a quiet suburb outside Brighton, along England's southern coast. Rachel lives there with her parents, Jenny and Peter. By all accounts, it's a good childhood. Safe. Ordinary. That afternoon, her father is working in the front garden. Rachel asks for some money. Just enough for a chocolate bar from the local shop. She's wearing white roller skates when she pushes off down the street, sometime around 4 in the afternoon. An hour passes. Then more. Worry sets in slowly, the way it always does, first rational, then not. And just as her parents are considering going out to look for her, there's a knock at the door. It's the police. Rachel has been taken to the hospital. She was found more than 7 miles from home, on Devil's Dyke Road. A couple driving by noticed her first. They knew immediately that something was wrong. They didn't debate it. They didn't hesitate. They brought her to the nearest house and called for help. At the hospital in Brighton, Jenny arrives and is met by Officer Deborah Wood. Before she's allowed to see her daughter, she's given the same instruction again: stay calm. Don't let Rachel see what this is doing to you. The interview has to come first. That kind of request, it doesn't feel real until you're standing there trying to follow it. Days later, police arrange a formal identification. 10 men stand in a row. 9 are there as fillers. 1 is the reason they're doing this at all. His name is Russell Bishop. It's not his first time under suspicion. Just a few years earlier, he'd been charged with murder and then cleared in court. Acquitted. Free to walk away. The case that made his name known began on October 9th, 1986. 2 girls, Karen Hathaway and Nicola Fellows. They disappear within walking distance of their homes. Search teams move through nearby woodland. Neighbors help. Officers fan out. Hours stretch into nearly a full day, and hope thins with every one of them. Their parents go on television. They ask anyone who's seen anything to speak up. At around 4 in the afternoon on October 10th, an officer named Paul Smith walks near Wild Park, just streets from where the girls lived. That's when he hears a voice. It belongs to Russell Bishop. He lives nearby, in Molescombe, close enough to know the families. close enough to be familiar. Sometimes the detail that stands out later is the smallest one, just someone's voice, in the wrong place at the wrong time. Bishop isn't just nearby that day, he's part of the search. Walking around with his dog, talking to people, acting helpful. Police already know who he is, though. Nothing major on his record. Stolen cars, shoplifting, small stuff. Around the estate, people don't take him seriously. More nuisance than threat. Almost a punchline. Still, something he says catches attention. Enough that officers remember it later. As the group heads back toward Wild Park, shouting breaks out ahead of them. 2 boys. Loud. Panicked. They're yelling that they've found them. Before Officer Paul Smith can react, Bishop bolts. He runs straight toward the sound. Faster than anyone expects. Smith follows, just a step behind. When they reach the spot, Smith moves instinctively, putting himself between Bishop and the bodies. The girls are lying there, arranged in a way that doesn't make sense. Nicola Fellows is on her back, one knee bent. Karen Hathaway is face down, her arm tucked under her, like she's fallen asleep in the grass. It looks peaceful at first glance. Too peaceful. Smith kneels. He checks for signs of life. Touches their skin. Cold. Not cooling cold. Like stone. Like marble. I still remember how quiet it suddenly felt, even with people everywhere. News travels faster than explanations ever do. A uniformed officer approaches one of the parents and says the words everyone waits for. They've been found. For a brief moment, there's relief. Then the next question, and the answer that follows it. The park is still there. Ordinary. Green. But nothing about it feels safe anymore. One parent collapses where they stand. Another has to be guided away before they can even understand what they're being told. Later comes the identification. Walking into a room no one should ever have to enter. Picking up belongings that still smell familiar, and then leaving without them. The impact spreads quickly. Parents stop letting children walk alone. Windows stay lit. Fear settles in quietly, house by house. Detectives begin what becomes the largest murder investigation Sussex has ever seen. More than 10,000 interviews. Doors knocked. Names written down. Tips chased until there's nothing left to chase. One name never fully disappears. Russell Bishop. People mention him again and again. Why was he there? Why did he say that? Why did he run? He knows both families. The girls knew him too. Which matters? Because it means trust didn't need to be built. It was already there. Witnesses place him near the area when the girls vanished. Someone remembers seeing him later that night wearing a blue sweatshirt. Not long after, a blue sweatshirt is found discarded along a trail near where the bodies were discovered. That same trail leads toward Bishop's home. Forensics examine it closely. Ivy spores are present, spores that match the location where the girls were found, not the spot where the sweatshirt was recovered. Fibers from the girls' clothing are embedded in the fabric. Whoever killed them was wearing this. What investigators need now is something simple and hard at the same time, proof that the sweatshirt belonged to Bishop. In 1986, science doesn't give them much to work with. DNA isn't ready to help yet, but there's something else. Red stains on the fabric. Not blood. Paint. A specific red paint. The same kind Bishop had recently been seen using on 2 friends' cars. It's not definitive, but it narrows the field. While Bishop is questioned at the station, 2 officers take the sweatshirt to his house. His girlfriend, Jenny Johnson, answers the door. She looks at what they're holding and says it without thinking. You've brought Russell's sweatshirt back. She doesn't hesitate. Doesn't ask questions. She signs a statement confirming it belongs to him. At the station, officers feel it shift. This is the link they needed. At that point, it felt settled, like the pieces had finally lined up. On December 4th, Russell Bishop is charged with the murders of Nicola Fellows and Karen Hathaway. He denies it immediately, continues to deny it. People close to him struggle with the idea. He was around all the time, played football on Sundays, sat in their homes. Nothing about him matched what had happened in that park. The trial begins in November of the following year. The country watches. Newspapers call the girls the babes in the wood. There's an expectation now, not hope, certainty. Prosecutors believe the case is strong, until Jenny Johnson takes the stand. And everything changes. She tells the court the sweatshirt wasn't Russell's. Says her statement was forced. Claims police pressured her into signing something she didn't believe. The same words that once sealed the case now unravel it, spoken again. but this time in reverse. The prosecutors can see it happening in real time. Jenny Johnson is lying. They're sure of it, but certainty isn't proof. And without her original statement holding, the blue sweatshirt drifts back into uncertainty. Ownership becomes suggestion. Suggestion becomes doubt. The defense steps into that gap immediately. If the sweatshirt can't be tied to Bishop, then it could belong to anyone. If it could belong to anyone, then anyone could have done this. The case doesn't collapse all at once. It thins, weakens, loses weight. After 4 weeks in court, the jury is sent away to decide. When they return, the words land hard. Not guilty. The man accused of killing 2 schoolgirls from Brighton is free to go. People sit stunned. Not angry yet. Just hollow. How did this happen? What did we miss? Everyone thought they knew. Officers, neighbors, families. Bishop had walked. It felt like something slipped through a crack that shouldn't have been there. At that time, the law is clear. Double jeopardy. A person acquitted cannot be tried again for the same crime, even if new evidence appears later, even if certainty hardens into proof. So when Russell Bishop steps out of the courtroom, the door closes behind him forever. He raises his arms, shouts that he's innocent. Then he pushes past reporters and crosses the street to a pub. His brothers are there. His girlfriend too. They celebrate. Across town, 2 families are left with the understanding that this is it. There will be no second chance. No return. Anger comes later. The sense that people are watching, judging, laughing, as if 2 children's lives have been weighed and dismissed. Less than 4 months after the verdict, Bishop begins reshaping his life in public. He talks about being wronged, about rebuilding. The country slowly shifts its attention. The victims fade from headlines. Police don't. Behind closed doors, Sussex officers remain convinced they had the right man. But belief doesn't change the law. The investigation stalls not because of doubt, but because there's nowhere left to take it. The public pushes back. The parents refuse to let it rest. When someone tells you it's over, that doesn't mean you feel finished. They talk about 2 little girls in a cemetery in Brighton, and about responsibility. 50 people gather and walk from Wild Park. A petition is handed over. A request, simple and impossible at the same time, reopen the case. Another march follows, in August of 1989, and Russell Bishop shows up. He walks alongside the parents of the children he was accused of killing. Cameras notice. People whisper. He answers questions calmly, saying he wants the case reopened too. That his name won't be cleared until the real killer is found. For those who know the case, it's unbearable to watch. He doesn't step back. He steps forward, takes the center. Seeing him there, it didn't feel accidental. To many, it looks like strategy, a way to soften his image, to recast himself as part of the cause rather than its shadow. Then comes the article. Bishop accepts money from a tabloid, roughly $20,000, to tell his story. In print, the focus shifts. The Bishop family suggests another suspect. Nicola's father, Barry Fellows. They say police once considered him. Say it's not unheard of for a parent to kill their child. The accusation spreads before it can be stopped. Police investigate fully, methodically. Barry Fellows is cleared. Completely. No evidence. No connection. But the harm lingers. Because once something like that is said out loud, it doesn't disappear when it's proven false. The house doesn't feel like a home anymore. Graffiti coats the walls. One word appears again and again. Murderer. Other messages follow it, telling them to leave, telling them they're not wanted. Barry Fellows sees it every day. Rumors have turned into something physical now. Paint. Threats. A weight that doesn't lift. Eventually, he feels he has no choice but to speak. He says there are people accusing him of crimes he didn't commit. That it hurts him. Yes, but it hurts his wife and his son more. Once something like that sticks, it doesn't really matter what's true anymore. For Russell Bishop, the noise fades in the opposite direction. Suspicion loosens its grip. He's no longer the man everyone avoids. And on February 2nd, 1990, Sussex police send him a letter. The Babes in the Wood case is officially closed. No appeal. No reopening. Someone has gotten away with murder. 2 days later, on February 4th, another child disappears. Rachel Watts is 7. That afternoon, it's bright out. Warm. Her father is working in the garden. She's on her roller skates again. He gives her $1 to spend at the local sweet shop. They haven't lived there long. She takes a wrong turn. She remembers seeing a man working on his car. Her dad is a mechanic. That detail matters to her. It feels familiar. Safe. She asks him for directions. There's no warning. No time to react. He grabs her and forces her into the trunk. The lid slams shut and the car pulls away. Inside, it's dark except for flashes of red light when the car slows. Rachel feels around. Her hands find a spray can. A hammer. She bangs on the metal as hard as she can. Screams. Says she'll give him the money. Begs. The response comes back cold. Be quiet or I'll kill you. She stops hammering. Starts thinking. Unties her skates. Takes them off. Bare feet might run faster than wheels. When the car stops, he takes her out. Carries her. Straight into the woods. In the interview room later, with her mother sitting beside her, Rachel answers questions carefully. She talks about the car. About being carried. She leaves things out. To the investigators, it sounds like confusion. Like gaps in memory. But that's not what it is. Sometimes silence isn't forgetting. It's choosing what not to say. Years later, Rachel explains the part she never shared. She says she didn't talk about it because she felt ashamed. Because she didn't have words for it. Because she was a child trying to survive something her mind couldn't hold all at once. At Devil's Dyke, he throws her onto the back seat. Orders her to remove her clothes. She does. She stays conscious while he assaults her. Then his hands move to her throat. Air disappears. Sound narrows. She can't speak. And then she blacks out. He carries her into the trees and leaves her there, believing she's dead. When she wakes, the world won't stay upright. She can't stand. She crawls. Falls. Crawls again. It's freezing. She knows she has to find help. Headlights appear on the road. Her first thought is that it's him. That he's come back to finish what he started. But staying hidden means dying there. So she moves toward the light. A young couple stops. They wrap her in a blanket. They call for help. At the hospital, Rachel is reunited with her mother. Later, back home, she worries about the wrong thing. That she's lost her new sweater. That she'll be in trouble. She won't go to bed. Sits on the couch, pulling thorns from her feet. That detail, the thorns, it's the part that never really leaves you. Her father watches her and feels something settle in his chest that won't go away. The idea that parents are meant to protect. That failing at that feels personal, permanent. By morning, Sussex police are already moving. At first light, more than 100 officers begin searching. It becomes the most intense operation they've launched since the Wild Park murders. And this time, they are racing someone who has already proven what happens when he isn't stopped. Rachel's description gives police something solid to work with. A white man, a mustache, a red car. The details move fast through the unit, and almost immediately a familiar name surfaces. Someone officers already know. Someone who, that same night, was seen driving a red car. Russell Bishop. 2 officers head to his house. When they arrive, he's outside, scrubbing his car with urgency. Not casually, not absent-mindedly. Like it matters. They open the trunk. Inside, the pieces line up too cleanly to ignore. A can of WD-40. A hammer. Fresh chip marks on the inside of the trunk lid. Fibers that later match the clothes Rachel had been wearing. Then more. Blood. Semen. There's no longer any distance between Bishop and the child he tried to kill. He's arrested on the spot. That was the moment everything stopped being theoretical. To secure the case, investigators ask Rachel to do something no child should ever have to do twice. Another lineup. She asks the question first, will he be able to see me? She's told no. She holds her mother's hand and doesn't let go. The men sit in a row behind glass. She looks carefully, slowly. Then she points. Number 1. It's Russell Bishop. On December 13th, 1990, the verdict comes back. Guilty. Kidnapping. Sexual assault. Attempted murder. The same man who once walked free after the deaths of 2 girls is sentenced to life for trying to kill a 7-year-old child. Additional sentences follow. Years stacked on years. The courtroom doesn't erupt. No cheers. No relief that feels complete. Because in Brighton, people are thinking of 2 other children. Karen. Nicola. Their parents sit there too. It felt like justice, just not the kind that finishes anything. There's no satisfaction. Only the knowledge that this should have happened sooner. That it would have changed everything if it had. The families say their fight isn't over. That it can't be. because justice came too late for their daughters. Grief doesn't recede with time. It just changes shape. One mother still catches herself looking at clothes in shop windows, imagining how they might have fit her child. Meanwhile, Rachel goes home. The court protects her identity. She's given space to grow up away from headlines. For years, she manages something close to a normal life. Then the phone rings. Russell Bishop is being considered for parole. She's stunned. She thought life meant life. What she learns instead is that, because she survived, his sentence allows for release after 14 years. It's 2004. Rachel is 22 now, old enough to understand exactly what that means. She's terrified. That fear doesn't really announce itself. It just shows up everywhere. She imagines him finding her, coming back, finishing what he started. Then in 2005, something changes. A law that stood for centuries is repealed. Double jeopardy. The rule that once protected Bishop from ever being tried again. Now, if new and compelling evidence exists, the murders of Karen Hadaway and Nicola Fellows can be revisited. But time is the enemy. Bishop's parole is approaching. Investigators have one opportunity. One chance to reopen the past and make it hold in court. A new inquiry begins. And it's harder than anyone wants it to be. Evidence is old. Memories have faded. Some things are gone forever. And still they keep digging. Because for Rachel, for the families, the alternative is unthinkable. She later says she used to dream he would climb a ladder to her bedroom window. That he would come back. That he would finish it. And even awake. That fear never fully leaves. After that phone call, Rachel's world shrinks. The idea of Bishop being released doesn't fade with time. It grows. She stops feeling safe outside. Then she stops going outside at all. Eventually, she can't leave the house. Years pass like that. Parole hearings come and go. Each time, Bishop is denied. Each time, the relief is temporary. Because denial isn't the same as certainty. Until he's gone for good, Rachel can't rest. It's hard to explain what it's like to live in anticipation of someone else's freedom. In 2013, something shifts. Investigators return again to the blue sweatshirt. The same piece of evidence that once failed them. Bishop has always claimed he never knew it. Never owned it. Never touched it. One examiner decides to look somewhere no one had focused before. Inside a small tear on the cuff. That's where the DNA appears. It matches Russell Bishop. It's a breakthrough, and immediately a problem. Because scientists can't say with certainty that the sweatshirt hadn't been contaminated decades earlier. Which means that DNA, on its own, can't be used in court. But the case doesn't rest there anymore. Back in 1986, when the girls' bodies were first found, forensic teams took adhesive tapings from their arms. Standard procedure. Preserved. Sealed. At the time, there was no way to test them properly. Now there is. When those tapings are re-examined, something emerges. A mixed DNA profile. Russell Bishop. Karen Hadaway. His DNA is on her arm. For investigators, it's enormous. This is what they've been waiting for. New. Compelling. Untouched by contamination claims. In May 2016, Bishop is removed from his cell. He assumes it's about parole. He's calm. After questioning, he's arrested instead. A third trial is coming. You could feel how careful everyone was being, like no one wanted to say it out loud yet. The prosecution believes they finally have enough. But Bishop has an explanation ready. One he says he gave years ago. When the trial opens, families fill the courtroom again. October 16, 2018. The murders of Karen Hadaway and Nicola Fellows are back before a jury. The defense challenges the sweatshirt. Insists it was never Bishop's. Then comes the explanation for the DNA on Karen's arm. Bishop claims that when the girls were found, he reached out and checked for a pulse. Something, he says, he mentioned to police decades earlier. The explanation hangs there, and then collapses. Because the truth is darker. After killing the girls, Bishop joined the search the next morning. He wanted to be there first. Wanted proximity. Wanted a reason later for traces of himself to be present. The problem for him is simple. He never got close enough. His story doesn't fit the evidence. And when it becomes clear the case is slipping away, the prosecution introduces one final piece. Letters. Written by Bishop during his earlier trial. Sent to a 13-year-old. Sexual in tone. Explicit enough that the courtroom stills as they're read aloud. Bishop erupts. Shouts from the dock. Demands a retrial. The letters are read anyway. You could tell, This wasn't something he expected them to use. On December 10th, just after midday, the jury is sent out. Less than 2 hours later, they return. Russell Bishop is found guilty of murdering Karen Hathaway and Nicola Fellows. The crimes he committed in 1986. The justice he evaded for more than 3 decades. He receives an additional 36 years. There's no triumph in the room. Just release. And exhaustion. Attention turns back where it should have always stayed. 2 girls. Their families. Their persistence. It felt like the end of a very long sentence, not the end of grief. One mother talks about opening a chest where her daughter's clothes were kept. About the smell still there. Familiar. Immediate. After the verdict, she says she felt something settle. That now, her child could finally rest. She says she believes she's still there. Not visible. Not touchable. But present. And after 32 years, justice, finally, found its way back to where it was supposed to begin. If she were allowed one impossible thing. Just one. A single day that didn't end. Arms wrapped tight. Laughter that didn't have to stop. Conversations that picked up exactly where they were left. The small, ordinary moments that only feel precious once they're gone. She says she would give up countless tomorrows for one yesterday. After the trial, Rachel turns towards something quieter. Not closure. Control. It doesn't happen all at once. It comes in pieces. In choices. In letting herself believe that life can still move forward without erasing what came before. She meets Jay. What draws her to him isn't drama or intensity. It's something simpler. He shows her what it feels like to be loved without conditions. And more importantly, he makes sure she knows it. Sometimes safety isn't about walls. It's about who stands next to you. She becomes a mother young. Just 22 when her first daughter is born. She talks about her children with a quiet pride, the kind that doesn't need emphasis. They're beautiful. All of them. Proof that something good can grow from ground that once felt scorched. Telling her story becomes part of the work. Not for attention. For grounding. She says she wants to live in the present. To stop being trapped in what happened. To stop hiding. She talks about simple hopes. Sitting outside with her family. Going on dates. Laughing in the sun. Ordinary things most people never have to wish for. She knows it will take effort. Therapy. Time. Courage. She's willing. Because she's still here. And that still counts for something. There's a difference between surviving and deciding you want more than that. The interview winds down. Someone checks the time. 2:30. A small pause. A nod. That's it then. The camera drifts. Someone asks why she's looking away. Rachel smiles just slightly. And the room lets her go. Story 2. The call opens without warning. A man is speaking fast, then stopping, then starting again. He says his wife is in bed. He says her lips look blue. He says her hands are cold. The dispatcher keeps her voice steady, asking if he's with her, asking if she's awake. He answers no. This is Matt Baker. He has just found his wife, Carrie, lying still in their bedroom. No response. No movement. A typed letter sits nearby. An apology, written in the first person. It reads like a goodbye. Almost immediately, there's confusion. The words don't sound like Carrie. The tone is wrong. The phrasing feels unfamiliar. People who know her will later say the same thing. She didn't write that. I remember thinking how quiet the call felt, even with all the talking, like something had already settled. In Hewitt, Texas, Matt and Carrie Baker are known. Not vaguely, personally. They're the couple people point to. Young, devoted, involved. Parents of 2 little girls. The kind of family that feels anchored. Matt is more than a husband. He's a Baptist pastor. Young, articulate, respected. Someone trusted with sermons and prayers and private grief. Carrie is a teacher, a mother, someone who organizes life around care and routine. Their marriage is described as blessed. Chosen. Safe. After Carrie's death, Matt doesn't retreat. He steps forward. He speaks in churches. He talks about loss on television. He's photographed. He explains how faith carried him when nothing else could. He says God stayed close. He says love never really leaves. People listen. Carrie's mother does not. Linda Doolin hears the same words everyone else hears, but something doesn't settle. Carrie had told her things. Quiet things. That her marriage wasn't as steady as it looked. That she suspected Matt was seeing someone else. That she felt uneasy, though she couldn't fully explain why. Matt denies it. Calmly. Repeatedly. He says he loved his wife. That marriages have hard seasons. That he would never hurt her. It wasn't anger that stood out to me. It was how practiced the answers sounded. If Linda had stopped there, this would have stayed a tragedy with no edges. But she doesn't stop. She keeps asking, keeps reading, keeps thinking about her grandchildren, about where they are sleeping now. Eventually something surfaces. A message Carrie wrote herself. Not on loose paper. Not in a note. Hidden inside her Bible. A place no one else would look unless they were searching with intention. The words change everything. Not loudly. Not all at once. But enough. Go back a few hours. It's a Friday night in early April, 2006. Late. After 11. Matt is driving home through Hewitt, a quiet suburb outside Waco. He's been out briefly. A movie rental. Gas. Ordinary errands that don't leave a trail. At home, the house is dark. The girls, Kenzie and Grace, are likely asleep. He walks inside and goes toward the bedroom. The door is locked. That's when the night shifts. When he gets it open, Carrie is on the bed. Still. Unresponsive. The room feels wrong in a way that's hard to describe and impossible to forget. The dispatcher stays on the line, guiding him through chest compressions. Step by step. Slow enough to follow. Urgent enough to matter. Matt gives the address clearly. No hesitation. He asks for help for his daughters too. They're in the house. Long before this night, Matt and Carrie's story looked simple. They met in the mid-1990s at a summer camp while both were in college. Working side by side. Married within months. Fast, certain, admired. They settled near Waco, built a life, welcomed 3 daughters, Kenzie, Cassidy, and Grace. Faith wasn't an accessory. It was the structure. And now, as sirens close in and questions begin forming in places no one wants to look, that structure is about to be tested from the inside. Matt is still on the phone when another concern breaks through his voice. The girls can't see this. He says that clearly. He doesn't want them walking into the bedroom, doesn't want them seeing their mother on the floor. He asks the dispatcher if someone can call Carrie's parents. Just to come over. Just to take care of the children. The call reaches Linda and Jim Doolin without much explanation. Only urgency. An operator tells them there's been an accident at their daughter's house, and they need to get there right away. They don't yet know what that means. By the time the ambulance pulls into the driveway, Carrie hasn't moved. Paramedics step into the bedroom and find her still on the floor. They check for a pulse. They begin compressions. There's a rhythm to it, practiced and hopeful, but her body doesn't respond. It doesn't take long before that rhythm stops. Linda arrives moments later. The car door barely closes before she's running. She's not inside yet when someone intercepts her at the front of the house. An emergency worker steps in front of her, puts a hand out, and says the words she will never forget: her daughter is dead. I remember how fast everything collapsed after that. There wasn't a moment in between. Shock settles over the family in layers. Carrie is a mother, a teacher, a daughter, someone people rely on, someone who shows up. And now she's gone, without warning, without explanation. In the quiet confusion that follows, medical staff briefly consider possibilities. A hidden condition. Something no one knew about. A sudden failure. An accident that no one could have seen coming. But while the room is being checked, police notice something that doesn't belong to those explanations. A letter. Typed. Neatly placed on the nightstand. Written as if by Carrie. Written as if she were saying goodbye. Later that night, a detective pulls Linda aside into the kitchen. Away from the others. Away from the noise. He tells her it's pretty obvious what happened. The words land hard. Her chest drops. That's the first time she realizes what they're suggesting. Not illness. Not accident. Something else. It felt like the air changed when that was said. Like the room shrank. Linda and Jim barely register what comes next. Everything feels distant, muted. They move through the house without really seeing it. All they can think is that they don't have a daughter anymore. That whatever comes next doesn't change that. In Texas, sudden deaths don't always follow the same path. When someone dies unexpectedly at home, a local justice of the peace decides the next steps. An autopsy isn't automatic. That night, police described the scene over the phone to Justice Billy Martin. They talk through what was found in the bedroom. They mention the letter. They describe the circumstances as they understand them. After hearing it, Judge Martin makes a decision. No autopsy is needed. 2 days later, it's Sunday, early April. The family is still numb, barely functioning. Grief hasn't settled yet. It's just noise and pressure. But Matt is already moving forward. He insists the service shouldn't wait. Arrangements begin immediately. The church is contacted. Plans are made for the next day. By Monday, less than 2 full days after Carrie was found, she is buried at Oakwood Cemetery. The memorial, originally planned at their Baptist church, has to be moved to a much larger funeral home. Too many people want to attend. The community response is overwhelming. To Linda, everything feels rushed. Too fast. There's no space to understand what just happened, let alone mourn it. But Matt tells them this is the right way. That delaying only prolongs pain. That healing should begin now. And for the moment, everyone is too exhausted to argue. By mid-afternoon, the parking lot is full. Oak Crest Funeral Home in Waco can't hold everyone who came. It's 3 in the afternoon, and hundreds are already inside, with more still arriving. Carrie's family, her students' parents, church members, neighbors who only knew her in passing, but felt the loss anyway. People say they hurt for her. They say they hurt that someone could hurt that deeply. Mostly, they say they're just trying to get through the day, one step at a time. Even the largest room in the building feels too small. Folding chairs fill the aisles. People stand pressed against the walls, spilling into the foyer, leaning through open doors just to hear. At the front, Matt sits in the first row. He doesn't move much. His head stays in his hands. He doesn't speak during the eulogies. He doesn't look up. I remember noticing how still he was. Not frozen exactly, just very contained. Near the end of the service, Matt finally stands. His daughters are with him at the pulpit. He tells the crowd he'll be back at Crossroads Baptist in 1 week. On Easter Sunday, he says God hasn't abandoned him. He says strength will come. Less than a week later, he keeps that promise. It's Easter Sunday, mid-April. Just days since the burial. Only 8 days since Carrie died. Matt stands in front of the congregation and delivers the sermon. He speaks about resurrection, about rising, about heaven. He tells them Carrie has gone ahead. Messages begin pouring in from pastors and ministers across the country. Letters, emails, praise for his faith, for his courage. One woman even offers to help him learn how to do his daughter's hair. A small kindness, a practical one. From the outside, it all looks supportive. A community lifting up a grieving father. A man working, parenting, preaching, holding it together. The girls cling closely to him, especially the youngest. From the outside, it really did look like people were rallying around him. But while the church is moving forward, Carrie's family isn't. The weeks pass in a blur for them. Grief doesn't arrive cleanly. It comes in waves that interrupt sleep and thought. And underneath that, something else keeps pressing in. Linda and her sisters can't let it go. They knew Carrie. Not the version people talk about at funerals, but the everyday one. The mother who hovered. The woman who laughed easily. The teacher who planned too much because she cared too much. Leaving her children behind, choosing to disappear from their lives, it doesn't fit. So they start looking, quietly, carefully, and small things begin to stand out. Not one big mistake, just details. The first is how little documentation there is. Only a handful of photos taken at the scene. For a sudden, unexplained death, that's unusual. There's not much else in the records either. Very little to go back to. Then there's the room itself. Everything looks almost too orderly. Too placed. On its own, it could mean nothing. Maybe the house was always neat. But seen through another lens, it starts to feel deliberate, like someone made sure the scene told a specific story. And then there's the letter. Typed. Not handwritten. No signature. Left beside the bed as if it explained everything. In theory, anyone could have written it. And once that thought takes hold, it doesn't let go. One detail keeps bothering the family more than they expect. The letter isn't just typed. It's sloppy. Words are misspelled in ways that feel careless. Simple words. A third-grade teacher wouldn't confuse them. Carrie was known for precision, for correcting papers, for noticing small errors. Yet in the letter, "to" appears with a single O, used in the wrong place. It's not a typo that slips by unnoticed. It stands out. It doesn't sound like her. It doesn't look like her. And it doesn't match the woman they knew. Even so, none of this seems to push the investigation forward. Police don't rush to speak with the one person who was there that night. Weeks pass. Nearly 2 months go by before Matt is formally interviewed, and when it finally happens, it feels informal. Brief. More procedural than probing. It didn't feel like anyone was digging. It felt like they were already done. Matt is composed. He answers questions without hesitation. His version of events stays the same. He appears cooperative, measured, even helpful. When asked to take a polygraph, he agrees without resistance and passes. To detectives, that's enough. There's no sign of a struggle. No obvious physical evidence. No clear motive. With nothing pointing directly at Matt, or at anyone, the case quietly closes. Carrie's death is treated as resolved. The assessment doesn't change. Police move on. Linda does not. She and her family keep circling back to the details that don't fit, searching for anything that might force a second look. And then, in early May, something unexpected surfaces. It's a phone bill. A shared family plan that includes Linda, Matt, and Carrie. As Linda flips through the pages, she freezes. In the days after Carrie died, her phone didn't go silent. It was used repeatedly, hundreds of times. Calls, messages, even calls to Matt's own number. That shouldn't be possible. Matt has an explanation. He says he gave the phone to a church member going through a difficult divorce. Someone in need. A charitable gesture. But the timing feels off. The delivery feels practiced. And giving away his wife's phone, so soon after her death, doesn't sit right. That was when something shifted for me. It wasn't just the story anymore. It was him. Around the same time, the girls begin to notice changes too. Grace is 5. Kenzie is 9. They're living full-time with their father now. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Carrie starts disappearing from the house. Photos come down. Frames are emptied. Her presence fades from the walls. Visits with Linda and Jim become less frequent. Phone calls shorten. Plans fall through. There's always a reason. Busy schedules. Long days. Not now. Piece by piece, it feels like Carrie is being erased. Then the numbness lifts. All at once. Linda later says the shock just drains away, leaving something sharper behind. Focus. Resolve. If no one else is going to ask the hard questions, she will. She and Jim go back to police. They bring their concerns. The letter. The phone. The changes in the house. They ask for the case to be reopened. The answer doesn't change. The ruling stands. The file stays closed. Evidence is sealed and locked away, out of reach. And once again, the door shuts. But this time, Linda isn't stepping back. They realize waiting isn't an option anymore. If they want answers, if they want to know their granddaughters are safe, they have to move first. So Linda looks outside the local system, and that's when someone unexpected steps in. Assistant United States Attorney Bill Johnston listens to the story from the beginning. Not just the headlines, the details. He hears what they hear. Too many things don't line up. Johnston brings in his own people. One of them is Matt Cawthon, a former Texas Ranger with a reputation for patience and precision. Together, they decide to take a different route. Civil court. By late July, nearly 4 months after Carrie's death, a wrongful death lawsuit is filed against Matt. It doesn't accuse him of murder outright. It does something quieter but powerful. It opens doors. Records. Depositions. Access. Now they can look properly. That changed the balance. Suddenly, questions were allowed. One of the first steps is digital forensics. A specialist goes through Matt's computer, line by line, history intact. What shows up stops the room. During church hours, inside the church, Matt had been viewing adult content. The browser history jumps back and forth between explicit sites and sermon research, sitting side by side like it meant nothing. Then there's a search from early March, 1 month before Carrie died. A query about overdosing on sleeping pills. It's disturbing, but still circumstantial. Then they find something else. Written by Carrie. Not typed. Not staged. Handwritten, in the margins of her Bible. Dated just 5 days before her death. A private prayer. A worried one. She writes about fear she can't shake. About needing protection. About not understanding what's happening with Matt. About asking for peace and safety. Her voice is calm, but the concern is unmistakable. It didn't read like panic. It read like someone bracing. To Linda, it feels like Carrie reaching back through time, trying to be heard. Still, even with everything laid out, there's a wall they can't get past. No direct proof. No physical link. Nothing a prosecutor can stand in front of a jury and call certain. The question isn't who did it. It's whether a crime can even be proven. By the fall of the following year, more than a year has passed. Matt continues to deny everything. And then he makes another move. He packs up and leaves town with the girls, relocating roughly 200 miles away. New city, new church, new congregation. From the outside, it looks like a fresh start. While Linda and her family keep pushing quietly, Matt starts doing the opposite. He goes public. Interviews, statements, appearances. He wants his version heard. Eventually, the story goes national. He sits down with a major network for a televised interview. Calm, earnest, certain. He says he loved his wife, that he would never hurt her, that she's the mother of his children. Carrie's parents watch it unfold from home, stunned. What hurts most isn't just the denial. It's that Matt brings the girls into it. Their granddaughters. On camera. On display. Talking about clothes. About toys. About everyday life. That part felt unnecessary. Like the line had already been crossed. To many viewers, it works. Matt comes across as a grieving father. A pastor leaning on faith. A man carrying unbearable loss. But for Carrie's family, every interview feels like losing ground. Especially when he begins invoking another tragedy. Years earlier, long before Carrie died, the Bakers lost their second daughter, Cassidy, as a toddler. She had been sick. Very sick. Carrie never recovered from that loss in the way people expected. She went to counseling. She held her family together. She kept going. Now Matt points to that grief as an explanation. He suggests that loss pushed Carrie into depression. That it explains everything. For Linda, it feels like history being rewritten. And once again, Carrie can't speak for herself. But the story isn't finished yet. After Cassidy died, sleep stopped coming. Carrie would lie awake for hours, night after night. Not restless exactly, just unable to shut her mind down. To some people, that gets labeled as instability. To those who knew her, it looked like grief doing what grief does. A mother missing her child. Cassidy stayed with her. In thoughts. In memories. In quiet moments. The loss didn't fade, but it didn't hollow her out either. It lived alongside everything else. Public opinion doesn't settle the same way. Some people accept Matt's explanations without hesitation. They hear his sermons, see his composure, and believe him. Others hesitate. But Carrie's family never wavers. Not once. To Linda, this isn't abstract anymore. It's personal. Her granddaughters are living with a man she believes killed their mother. That fear never really turns off. It just stays there. In Linda's mind, waiting is no longer neutral. Waiting is dangerous. And every move Matt makes only hardens her resolve. If there's truth buried here, it has to come out. But at this point, suspicion isn't enough. They need someone who can connect the pieces. Someone who knows what was happening behind closed doors. Someone who saw Matt when no one else was watching. That person turns out to be the woman who ended up with Carrie's phone. Vanessa Bowles. She's young. Early 20s. Recently divorced. New to Crossroads Baptist. She starts attending church while Matt is still publicly grieving. Not long after Carrie's death, Vanessa shows up at one of Matt's daughter's birthday parties. People notice. Friends say they see Matt and Vanessa together often. Too often. The closeness doesn't look pastoral. It looks personal. And when Linda had reviewed the phone records months earlier, the pattern was already there. Constant contact before and after Carrie died, with Vanessa using Carrie's old phone. Matt and Vanessa both insist it's innocent. Counseling. Friendship. Support during a hard time. But the frequency tells a different story. It was never just one call. It was always dozens. Questions start stacking up. What was really happening in the weeks before Carrie died? What did Vanessa know? And why was she so close, so fast? For a long time, there are no answers. Then years pass. It's January of 2010. Nearly 4 years after Carrie's death. Vanessa is subpoenaed. She doesn't volunteer. She's compelled to appear in court and testify about Matt Baker. Prosecutors believe she knows something critical. Enough that they offer her protection. Tell the truth, and you won't be charged. It feels like a last move. One final attempt to break the case open. We didn't know if it would work, but it was all that was left. The courtroom fills. Wooden benches creak under the weight of people who have waited years for this moment. Linda and her family sit together, steady but braced. When Vanessa walks in, the room shifts. She takes the stand. Matt is there. Carrie's family is there. And when Vanessa begins to speak, the room goes quiet in a way that feels intentional. She doesn't start with dates. She starts with how vulnerable she was. She says Matt took advantage of that he told her what she needed to hear, that he blurred the line between pastor and something else entirely. She calls him manipulative, says he used faith like a tool. She explains how counseling slowly turned into flattery, comments about her worth, about how someone would be lucky to have her. Then she says it plainly. In March of 2006, 1 month before Carrie died, she and Matt were having an affair. The courtroom doesn't move. She describes moments that Matt had always denied. Him smiling, telling her not to date other men, joking about dating her pastor, asking to pray together, holding hands, then kissing her, then leading her toward the bedroom. She says she felt immediate regret, shocked by what had happened, and that Matt didn't pull back. He reassured her, told her it was okay, told her to ask God for forgiveness, told her that God didn't expect people to stay with just one person forever. And just when it seems like the truth has fully surfaced, Vanessa says there's more. And the room holds its breath. Vanessa says she knows what really happened. Under oath, she doesn't hesitate. She tells the court that Matt talked about killing Carrie long before it happened. Not vaguely, not emotionally, practically. He told her Carrie took sleeping pills every night, that it could be made to look like an overdose. He said he'd leave a note, typed. He was confident no one would question it. Vanessa told him it wouldn't work, that he'd be caught. She says he laughed it off, told her Carrie typed everything, told her people already thought she was depressed, that no one would look too closely. That wasn't panic talking. That was planning. Vanessa says she asked him why. Why not just leave? Why not get a divorce? His answer stayed with her. He said he'd never be allowed to preach again, that his life would be over. In his mind, she tells the court divorce was worse. She's asked when the conversations shifted, when they crossed the line from complaints to intent. She says it was mid-March. Around then, he started talking about methods, about timing, about what he could do. Then, she says, he told her something else. He told her what happened that night. Just once. He said he had gotten large pills and emptied them, that he crushed sleeping medication and put it inside, that he restrained Carrie to the bed, that he stayed close to her until she fell asleep. Vanessa's voice stays steady as she repeats what he told her, that he used a pillow, that he thought she was gone, that he stopped and then didn't. She says he told her he made sure. Afterward, he said he arranged the room, locked the door, left the house. No one in that room was breathing normally anymore. She tells the court she knew which day he planned to try again. That Friday, early April. She knew what was coming, and still she felt trapped. Who would believe her, she says. He was a preacher, respected, trusted. She was young, recently divorced, alone. She believed speaking up would only destroy her. When Vanessa finishes, the courtroom doesn't react the way people expect. There's no noise, no movement, just shock. For Linda, the testimony is worse than she imagined, and exactly what she feared. A level of cruelty beyond what she'd allowed herself to picture. And Vanessa isn't alone. After her, other women come forward, one by one. Stories from different years, different places, but the same pattern. Private spaces, pressure, boundaries ignored, being told no didn't matter, being told they wanted it anyway. The stories didn't overlap perfectly, but the behavior did. In total, 12 women testify. Their accounts align, not word for word, but in substance. They describe a man who used authority and trust, who believed he could cross lines without consequence, who thought himself protected. That image finally breaks. At sentencing, Linda is given the chance to speak. For the first time in years, she addresses Matt directly. She tells him he hasn't looked at her since her daughter died. She asks him to look now. She tells him what he took. Not just Carrie, but the girls' childhoods, their sense of safety, their future. Kenzie and Grace are no longer in his care. Linda and Jim fought for custody and won. The girls are with family now, growing up in a stable home, loved, protected. Grace is 12. She's creative. She plays music. She's learning who she is. Kenzie is nearly 17, thinking about college, thinking about what comes next. They're moving forward, and Carrie's story finally was heard. The house sounds different now. There's laughter in it, real laughter, the kind that comes without effort. Linda talks about living with 3 women and how, some nights, the noise just fills the space, giggling, talking over each other, laughing for no reason at all. She calls it a symphony. I just sat there listening. I didn't want to interrupt it. She says she sees Carrie in those moments. Not in a painful way. In small things. In the girls' expressions. In how they move through the room. In how they love each other. Carrie would have cherished this, Linda says. She would have fought for it. For her daughters. For their freedom to grow up without feeling pulled in opposite directions. Without being asked to choose sides. Just allowed to be teenagers. That's all they want now. Linda says she wants people to know the truth. Not for attention. Not for closure. Just so Carrie's story isn't rewritten or softened or forgotten. Because Carrie is still here, in the ways her daughters laugh, in the way they carry themselves, in the light they bring into the room. You don't lose someone completely when you can still recognize them. On a cold day in late January, 2010, the legal part finally ends. Matt Baker is sentenced to 65 years in prison. Enough time that he won't be able to harm anyone else. Enough time that he can't keep shaping the story to his advantage. Enough time that Carrie's name is no longer defenseless. Without Linda and Jim refusing to stop, without years of pushing against closed doors, the outcome could have been very different. Matt might have walked away. Carrie's death might have stayed unexplained. But it didn't. Because a family kept going when it would have been easier to quit. Because they listened to the details no one else wanted to hear. Because they believed Carrie when she could no longer speak. In the end, justice didn't arrive quickly. It arrived because it was carried there piece by piece by the people who loved her most. Story 3. The voice you're hearing belongs to a little boy named Damien Huffman. He's 4 years old. When that interview begins, only about an hour has passed since his life split in two. Until that morning, Damien lived quietly on a farm in rural Ohio with his grandparents. They had raised him from the start. To them, he wasn't just family, he was the center of the house. And to Damien, that farm was home. Then came March 27, 2003. Damien walked up to the front door of his daycare alone. Pajamas still on. Blood on his skin. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just stood there. At first, no one knew what his presence meant. Not until deputies drove out to the farm. Not until they went into the bedrooms. Not until they saw the grandparents in their beds. Both were dead. No forced explanation. No obvious reason. And for a moment, no suspect at all. This case might have stayed that way if Damien hadn't done one small thing earlier that morning. He pretended to be asleep. The town is Bradford, Ohio. A quiet place. The kind where fields stretch farther than conversations. Damien lived there with his great-grandparents, Jack and Linda Myers, and his mother, Amber. The house sat on a wide farm, surrounded by land and long gravel paths. Amber had been very young when Damien was born in the late 1990s. Jack and Linda didn't hesitate. They opened their door, gave her a room, and helped raise the baby as if he were their own child. They were older when they married, both in their 50s, blending families that were already grown. Together, they ran a small pizza shop. Around town, people knew them, trusted them, the kind of couple whose names came up when help was needed. They were just always there. If someone needed something, Jack and Linda figured it out. Jack adored Damien. He'd sit the boy on his lap, drive around the fields on farm equipment, letting Damien believe he was in charge. To a child that age, it felt like freedom. The house was rarely quiet. Family came and went. Kids everywhere. Meals that stretched long into the evening. No one talked about step relations or technical titles. It was just family. There was no sense of danger. No warning signs. Nothing that made anyone pause. Amber's life was starting to shift. She was older now. Recently married. Financially stable for the first time. She had her own place about half an hour away. The plan was simple. Damien would finish preschool, then move in with his mother. Kindergarten would start near her new home. Jack and Linda would still see him all the time, just not every morning. That future was already imagined. Then the phone rang. At 9:15 in the morning, a dispatcher in Ohio answered a call from a daycare. A teacher was speaking fast. Too fast. A little boy had arrived by himself. He was wearing pajamas. He was covered in blood. The boy was Damien. The teachers knew him. His home was about a mile away. Children don't run that distance without a reason. Officers were sent to the farm immediately, still unsure what they were heading toward. Inside the daycare, fear spread quickly. The dispatcher told the staff to lock everything down. Doors closed. Children kept inside. No one knew whether whatever had happened was finished or still moving. At that point, nobody knew if it was an accident or something else. There was just too much missing. Deputies pulled up to the farm a short time later. The place looked wrong before anyone stepped inside. The front door was wide open, and nothing about that felt accidental. The officers don't rush the doorway. They stop first. Weapons up. Someone calls out into the house, asking if anyone is home. No answer. The silence inside feels deliberate, not peaceful, just empty. They step through the front door anyway. Slow. The kitchen comes first. Nothing moving. No sound except their own boots. Then a bedroom door opens. That's where it stops being uncertain. 2 bodies are on the bed. Still. Blood everywhere. Jack and Linda Myers. Damien's grandparents. One of the officers notices Jack first. Blood at his mouth. At his nose. A gunshot wound to the back of his head. Too much blood for survival. He checks for a pulse anyway. At the neck. Nothing. No breath. Jack is gone. Linda is beside him. A gunshot wound to her face. Another to her hand. Close range. No sign she ever left the bed. They're both still warm. That detail lingers. Warm means recent. Not days. Hours. Which means the person who did this might not be far. The house is cleared next. Every room. Closets. Corners. No one else is inside. The killer is already gone. Back at the daycare, Damien doesn't go home. He stays with police. Watched. Protected. No one knows who did this yet. Until they do, nobody is cleared. Not even family. Damien is never left alone. At that stage, safety came before answers. There wasn't much else to rely on. Officers are sent to Amber's house next. Someone has to tell her. There's no good way to do that. The words land wrong. They say her grandparents are no longer here. The phrasing confuses her. For a moment, she thinks they're talking about Damien too. Then she realizes. Her son is alive. But she can't see him. Damien is placed into protective custody. Hidden from everyone. Even her. She doesn't know where he is. Doesn't know if he's scared. Or crying. Or asking for her. And there's nothing she's allowed to do about it. As the day unfolds, the news spreads through Bradford and the surrounding county. 2 people murdered in their own bed. On a farm that everyone knows. People start locking doors. Talking in low voices. Wondering who could do something like this. And walk away. It didn't fit the town. That's what people kept saying. It just didn't fit. Investigators begin working backward. The scene doesn't look like chaos. It looks intentional. At first, someone floats the idea of a burglary. That falls apart quickly. Money is still there. Cash. Cards. Personal items. Electronics untouched. Drawers are closed. Nothing rummaged through. This wasn't about taking something. It was about going there. About choosing them. That changes everything. A random intruder doesn't usually come in overnight, kill 2 people in their bed, and leave without a reason. This feels planned. Focused. Personal. So detectives shift inward. Toward the people closest to Jack and Linda. Friends. Family. Neighbors. Most of them lead nowhere. Until one name comes up. John. A longtime neighbor. A friend of the family. He comes forward and says he might know something. They sit him down. Ask him to talk. He mentions hunting trips. Time spent with Jack. And then he brings up Greg Myers. Jack's son. Greg is 25. Well-liked. Polite. He had just stood beside his father as best man at the wedding. He grew up on that farm. People who know the family struggle with the idea immediately. Greg was close to his dad. Deeply. No history of trouble. No record. No obvious reason. By every outward measure, he doesn't fit what people expect a suspect to look like. But expectations aren't evidence. And at this point, the investigation is only just beginning. Greg has a family of his own. A steady life. No known conflicts with his father or Linda. Nothing in his background that points toward violence. If you were ranking people by likelihood, his name would sit near the bottom. Still, police don't skip steps. Greg is asked to come in. When he enters the interview room, he looks unwell. Quiet. Withdrawn. He asks for a trash can almost immediately. Says his stomach has been bothering him all day. He seems shaken, but not defensive. When detectives ask where he was that morning, he doesn't hesitate. He says he was at work. About 30 miles away. He has proof. A stamped time record that places him there when the murders happened. There are other details, too. The footprints found at the farm don't match his shoes. His are larger. He doesn't argue. He doesn't resist. He agrees to everything they ask. Even the lie detector. Officers search his home. With permission. Nothing turns up. For the moment, Greg becomes a question mark instead of a suspect. Which leaves one voice still unheard. Damien's. The morning of March 27th begins differently for him. He wakes up on his own. That alone is strange. Normally, his grandparents would already be moving around, getting him ready for preschool. The house feels wrong. At 4 years old, he doesn't have language for that feeling. He just knows something isn't happening the way it should. Worried about being late, he climbs out of bed and heads downstairs. What he sees there doesn't make sense. Not to a child. He doesn't understand death, so his mind reaches for something else. Something it can hold. Later, when detectives ask him to explain what he saw, the words stop them cold. He says his grandparents were melting. They sit with that for a moment. Let it land. Damien tells them he tried to help. He picked up a tissue. Tried to wipe his grandfather's face. As if that might fix it. Jack had never left him when he needed help. Damien doesn't think he would now. He tries the phone next. Wraps his small hand around it. Dials for help. Nothing. No sound. No voice. Just silence. The phone line has been cut. That's the part that stays with you. He didn't panic. He kept trying things. Damien looks around the house, searching for another answer. Then he remembers the daycare. It isn't far. He knows where it is. So he opens the front door and runs. More than a mile. Alone. In his pajamas. When investigators listen closely to his account, something doesn't quite line up. Blood is found in Damien's bedroom. His story places everything downstairs. At that age, memory can blur. Or rearrange itself. Or leave things out. So detectives change their approach. They bring out a small model of the farmhouse. Little figures. Dolls. Nothing threatening. Just familiar shapes. They ask Damien to show them what happened. Sometimes kids explain better when they don't have to find the words. As he moves the figures through the rooms, the story shifts. Before he ever went downstairs, something else happened. Damien shows that he was still in bed when he heard a sound. A soft click. A door. He opens one eye. Just a little. Because he doesn't want to get in trouble for being awake. He assumes it's his grandma. Or his grandpa. It isn't. Standing there is someone he doesn't recognize. A dark figure. Wearing green. Holding a shotgun. Damien says he closes his eyes. Forces them shut. Stays still. Pretends to be asleep. When he looks again, the man is gone. This isn't a dream. Not the way he tells it. This is a child describing the moment he survived by not moving. Not long after, 5 miles from the farm, officers pull something from the Stillwater River. A shotgun. 12 gauge. The identifying numbers have been scraped away. It can't be traced. But it looks a lot like the weapon Damien described. And for the first time since that morning, the case shifts. Because now the story includes someone else. Someone Damien saw. Someone who was there. The shotgun doesn't stay anonymous for long. A forensic examiner manages to bring the serial number back. Slowly. Carefully. Enough to read it. Detectives start looking locally. Old listings. Community papers where people trade tools, vehicles, guns. Buried in one of those pages is an ad for a shotgun. Same model. Same make. The date stands out. March 25th. 2 days before Damien runs for help. That ad leads them to the man who sold it. When detectives knock on his door and ask if he remembers the sale, he doesn't have to guess. His wife brings out a small piece of notebook paper. A name written down so they wouldn't forget. Greg Myers. The room changes after that. Greg was supposed to be the least likely person. A son. A stepson. Someone woven into the same family Damien belonged to. Detectives go back. This time, they aren't just checking boxes. They're digging. What they find isn't public. It isn't obvious. But it matters. Greg's life had been coming apart quietly. Trouble at work. Money problems that didn't fix themselves. His house had already been taken back. Payments stopped because there was no way to catch up. He didn't know where he and his family were going to go. Then they look at the paperwork tied to Jack and Linda. The farm. If they died, Greg would inherit it. That's when the story stops drifting. That's when it locks into place. Greg is brought in again. Days after the murders. Same building. Different tone. This time, detectives don't circle. They ask directly about the will. About the property. About the money. About whether desperation played a role. Greg stays calm. His voice doesn't rise. But the air in the room tightens. He says he's being honest. They say he's not. They tell him they believe he asked around for a gun. That a child saw something. That Damien was there and lived. They tell him that matters. It felt like the moment where everything finally lined up, even if nobody wanted it to. Still, it's mostly circumstantial. Enough to suspect, not enough to guarantee a conviction. Then the river gives them something else. During another search near where the shotgun was found, officers spot a trash bag floating. Tied shut. Deliberate. Inside is a green jumpsuit. Just like Damien described. There's more in the bag. Latex gloves. One carries a fingerprint that later matches Greg. Shotgun slugs. The same type used in the murders. And shoes. Smaller than Greg's usual size. Smaller by a couple of sizes. But identical to the footprints found at the farmhouse window where someone came in. That's when the call goes out. An arrest is made. I remember just dropping to the floor. I couldn't make sense of it yet. For people who knew Greg, the news hits hard. Not anger first. Shock. Disbelief. Grief stacked on grief. Of all people, Greg. In April of 2004, the trial begins. Greg Myers stands accused of murdering his father, Jack, and his stepmother, Linda. He pleads not guilty. The courtroom fills with family. Siblings. Relatives. People who once sat around the same tables. Now they sit apart, watching. Greg doesn't look at them. There's no visible reaction. No apology. No acknowledgement. After only a few hours, the jury returns. Guilty. 2 counts of aggravated murder. Greg Myers is sentenced to 2 life terms. No parole. For some, the verdict brings relief. For others, it doesn't change the disbelief. Even after it was over, part of me kept thinking I'd wake up. That it couldn't really be him. But it was. And for Damien, the boy who stayed still and survived, it was finally over. Learning why he did it, that part hurts differently. Knowing it came down to money. Greed. That kind of motive doesn't fade with time. It stays sharp. There's anger in that realization. A sense that nothing about it was accidental. That the loss was chosen. For those left behind, the sentence feels final. A life spent behind bars for 2 lives taken. No more chances. With the conviction in place, the case finally loosens its grip on Damien. The months before that had been confusing. He was kept apart from his mother. Moved carefully. Watched constantly. His grandparents were gone, and the adults around him were trying to hold everything together without letting him see how fragile it was. Detectives kept pushing forward anyway, not just to solve a crime, but to protect a child who had already carried too much. He never stopped trying to help, even when it wasn't his job to. For someone so young, Damien showed a kind of quiet courage that stayed with people. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. Eventually, he goes home. He reunites with his mother, Amber. The plan they once talked about finally happens, even if it arrives through grief instead of celebration. Damien moves in with her. Starts kindergarten in a new place. A new routine. Jack and Linda aren't there to see it. But their presence lingers anyway. Getting him back, there aren't really words for that. Some cases never leave you. This was one of them. Years pass. Damien grows up. He does well in school. Finds his footing. Becomes known as dependable. Hardworking. Kind. The kind of young man people quietly root for. Now he's 22. And he's doing well. Those who loved Jack and Linda still talk about them the same way. As the center. The glue. The reason everyone felt connected. Their family wasn't simple. It didn't follow neat lines. But it held. And it endured. In Damien, that legacy continues. Not loudly. Not ceremonially. Just in the way he lives. And in that, something good survives what should have destroyed it. Story 4. It's mid-August, 1996. In Mobile, Alabama, a man walks into an electronics store during the middle of the day. He turns on a camera and records himself, right there among customers and employees who barely notice him. To everyone around him, he looks ordinary, calm, unremarkable. What no one in that store knows is that he is already running. A killing has happened, and the distance between him and it is not far. Only about 35 miles away, across state lines, an 18-year-old girl is about to appear where she should not be. Outside a quiet house in Moss Point, Mississippi, Brooke Weber is found alive. Barefoot. Shaking. Her words come out broken, overlapping. She keeps saying the same thing. Again and again, they shot him. Police try to slow her down, try to understand who him is. Brooke points across the street, to a house that looks still. Normal. Empty. Inside, nothing seems disturbed. No overturned furniture. No stains. No sign that anyone has been hurt there at all. The silence feels deliberate, and then someone notices the box. A box large enough for a person. Behind the house, the land drops into bayou water. Officers move carefully along the edge, scanning the surface. That's when they see it. Then they see more. And then they stop counting. 88 separate pieces of human remains drift in the water. This becomes the most disturbing crime Mississippi has ever faced. One that will not make sense for a long time. One that only begins to come into focus because a girl who was supposed to be dead wasn't. She will later be known by a name no one chooses for themselves. The girl in the butcher's box. It didn't look like a crime scene at first. That's what made it unsettling. The story pulls backward now, to Houston, Texas. Earlier that same week, Jeffrey Wolf is 21 years old. He lives with his father, Pasquale. It's an ordinary household. Quiet. On the 11th of August, Jeffrey comes home with someone new. He's excited in a way that doesn't need explaining. Pasquale remembers the moment clearly. The car pulling up. The introduction at the door. His son smiling wider than usual. "This is Brooke," he says. "My girlfriend." They had just arrived, and he wanted me to meet her right away. Brooke is young. 18. Friendly. Easy to talk to. Jeffrey hasn't known her long, only a few weeks, but it's obvious he's invested. The kind of interest that moves fast because it feels certain. They already have plans. A drive to Mississippi. A trip that's framed as work, but also something more. An excuse to be together longer. The morning of August 12th, Jeffrey leaves early. He hugs his father goodbye. There's nothing unusual about it. No sense that it's final. Pasquale will never hear from his son again. The next day, before sunrise, a call comes into the Jackson County Sheriff's Department. A resident reports someone pounding on their door. A young woman, terrified, holding a large knife while begging for help. When deputies arrive, Brooke is barely responsive. Her body is there, but she seems somewhere else. Questions don't land. She only repeats one sentence: "They shot him." Over and over. She points across the street. The house is checked again. Still no person inside. Still no blood. Just that box waiting in the quiet. While Brooke is taken in for questioning, officers keep searching. The house backs directly onto the bayou. A small boat sits nearby. Inside it, they notice drops of blood. Not smeared. Not pooled. Just enough to suggest movement. Nearby, partially hidden, an axe is found. Its blade is darkened, sticky. That's when it stopped feeling like confusion and started feeling intentional. The man police believe is responsible, Gary Simmons, is gone. Vanished into another state, another city, another store, where he films himself like nothing has happened. For now, Brooke is the only witness left alive. The only person who understands what that box was built for, and why she didn't stay inside it. Her account begins the night before, when she and Jeffrey crossed into Mississippi after a long drive, arriving after dark. She says she felt it almost immediately. Something wasn't right. They arrive after dark. The car slows in front of the house, and Brooke notices it right away. The porch light is off. It's a small thing, but it sticks. They were expected. Someone knew they were coming. Gary Simmons is sitting on the steps when they pull up. He doesn't stand. Doesn't wave. He just watches them. Brooke remembers thinking there was something off about him. Not dangerous yet. Just wrong in a way she couldn't name. Jeffrey had already told her these were friends. People he trusted. So she tells herself not to overthink it. Later, that choice will replay in her mind more times than she can count. Inside, Gary offers them drinks. The house feels quiet, but not tense. Brooke sits at the kitchen table and lets the men talk. Business talk. Money. Things that don't involve her. She isn't listening closely, but the tone sounds normal. Even friendly. Nothing feels like it's about to break. Then the sound hits. Gunfire. Sudden. Too loud for the room. Brooke looks up. Jeffrey is struck in the chest. His body jerks backward. Blood splashes against the blinds. He collapses onto the floor before her mind can catch up with what her eyes are seeing. Behind him stands another man, younger, holding a gun. Brooke didn't know anyone else was there. Her first clear thought is simple and absolute. She is going to die. Gary moves fast. He grabs her tightly, lifts her, carries her into another room. She doesn't scream. She can't. Her body is already ahead of her voice. He restrains her, silences her, and forces her into a box built to hold a person. The lid closes. The dark is complete. She wasn't processed as a witness yet. She was still just surviving minute to minute. Time inside the box doesn't move normally. There's no sense of hours. Just breathing. Panic. The sound of her own thoughts getting louder. She has no idea what will happen next, or if next even exists for her. Gary opens the box later. Takes her out. What happens then is reduced by him to judgment. As if her life can be weighed. Decided. Afterward, she is put back inside. Alone again. Back in the dark. She prays, but without words. Just the feeling. The hope that something interrupts this. Anything. She doesn't believe she's getting out alive. 24 hours pass. On August 14th, a woman named Lori receives a package at her workplace. Inside is a videotape. She recognizes the handwriting before she even plays it. The recording shows Gary. He's at a shopping mall. Calm. Casual. Speaking directly to the camera as if this is a private message. He addresses her by name. Says things didn't go as planned. Says it's time. Says he loves her. It wasn't a threat. It sounded more like closure. Lori Simmons is Gary's wife. From the outside, their marriage has looked stable. Ordinary. But when she sees that tape, dread settles in immediately. Because the violence in that house didn't start with Brooke. For Lori, it began years earlier. The house in Moss Point still unsettles her. Even decades later, she avoids it completely. She hasn't stepped inside in more than 27 years. Her story begins 6 years before Brooke ever met Jeffrey. August of 1990. Lori is preparing to marry Gary. She met him less than a year after her first divorce. She has 2 children. Gary works as a groundskeeper at their daycare. He seems gentle, helpful, safe. They move into the house together the day they marry. Early on, Gary tells her he enjoys writing short stories. Lori finds it charming, creative. In his office, there are dozens of binders. Over 50 of them, all filled. One day, curiosity wins. She opens one. Every story follows the same pattern. A woman taken captive, controlled, reduced to an object. The details are disturbing, not symbolic, not abstract. When Lori confronts him, she tells him plainly, this isn't pleasure. This is torture. Gary doesn't argue. He calls them fantasies. Then he says something that stays with her. He tells her there are secrets she knows nothing about. Lori tries to move past it. She has just married him. She wants this life to work. She tells herself writing doesn't mean action. She's wrong. After their first daughter is born, Gary's behavior changes. Lori is recovering. She tells him no when he wants intimacy. She tells him it's too soon. That night, he doesn't accept her answer. This is the first time Gary forces himself on her. Lori doesn't even have the language for it yet. She goes to the shower, scrubbing her skin, trying to understand what just happened. They are married. She isn't sure if what he did even has a name. She was questioning herself more than him at that point. But the stories don't stay on paper. One of them involves a box, built to hold a person. One day, Lori hears a sound from the kitchen. Banging. Muffled. Coming from somewhere it shouldn't. That's when she realizes the stories were never meant to stay imaginary. Lori notices the box before she understands what it means. It's large, heavy, built with intention, not something you accidentally assemble in a home. Eventually, she decides she can't ignore it anymore. She confronts Gary. His reaction isn't loud. There's no shouting, no argument. He stays calm, almost gentle, and then, without warning, his hand closes around her throat. The pressure is immediate. Precise. She loses consciousness. When Lori wakes up, she's in their bed. Her wrists and ankles are restrained, secured to the bedposts. She can't move. Gary is standing beside her watching. The room feels smaller than it should. Panic sets in fast. She begs him to untie her. Tells him she doesn't want this. That she's not okay with what's happening. Gary tells her it isn't about her. Then he blindfolds her. He wasn't reacting emotionally. He was following something internal. Lori can hear him moving around the room. The floor creaks with each step. He's slow, unhurried. There's no anger in his voice. That's what frightens her most. She feels the cold edge of a knife against her skin, sharp enough that any movement could break the surface. He traces it along her face carefully, as if outlining something he plans to remove. She freezes. This moment matches one of the stories he wrote. The stillness, the fear, the control. She realizes that reacting makes it worse, but not reacting does too. The quieter she becomes, the less interested he seems. Eventually, he tears the blindfold away. Tells her it's no longer fun. Lori understands then that the stories weren't fantasy. They were rehearsal. Afterward, she goes to the police. She tells them what happened. About the assault. About the restraint. About the knife. She's told there isn't enough evidence to move forward. There was nothing visible left behind. That mattered more than what she said. Lori tries another path. She asks for a divorce. She contacts legal aid and explains the abuse. What she's told next feels unreal. In Mississippi, she's informed, a woman cannot divorce while pregnant. Lori insists she isn't. Still, the state requires confirmation. She takes the test. It's positive. The thought of remaining tied to Gary for another year feels unbearable. Not just for her, but for her children. She knows she has placed them in danger by staying as long as she did. With no job, no savings, nowhere to go, she reaches out to domestic violence organizations. Eventually, they help her secure a small apartment. Enough distance, enough safety. She leaves with 2 suitcases, 2 diaper bags. That's it. Gary no longer has access to her, but he still has access to someone she loves. It's the summer of 1996. Lori's younger brother, Timothy, comes to stay with her. He wants to help, watch the kids, give her some relief. One night, around 11 in the evening, they're in the kitchen after putting the children to bed. There's a knock at the door. It's Gary. Timothy answers. Gary asks him to step outside for a moment. Lori doesn't know they're still in contact. She didn't even know they spoke. Tim comes back in and says Gary needs his help. Lori tells him he has no business with that man. Tim hugs her, says he'll be back within the hour. 4 hours pass. By 3:30 in the morning, Lori's anxiety won't settle. She calls Gary's house. It goes to an answering machine. She leaves a message. Calls again. Same result. The third time, the machine doesn't pick up at all. The phone just keeps ringing, and ringing, and ringing. Lori lets the phone sit on the counter and ring. She doesn't hang up. She just steps away and listens to the sound echo through the apartment until it finally stops on its own. What she doesn't know is that the call reached someone. Inside Gary's house, someone is awake now. 18-year-old Brooke is still inside the box. Her hands and feet have been bound for hours. At some point, exhaustion overtakes fear, and she falls asleep. The ringing phone pulls her back. She hears the answering machine click on. Then silence. No footsteps. No voices. That's when the thought forms clear and sudden. If this is ever going to end, it's now. It wasn't courage. It was timing. Brooke begins to move. Slowly. Carefully. The ropes bite into her wrists and ankles, but she keeps shifting, twisting, pushing against the knots. Little by little, they loosen. Enough. She gets free. The phone rings again somewhere in the house. Still unanswered. She pulls herself upright, onto her knees, and presses her back against the inside of the lid. It doesn't move at first. She pushes harder. Everything she has goes into it. Her legs shake. Her breath shortens. Then the metal gives. The lid breaks open. She doesn't pause to look around. The house is empty. Clean. Almost staged. Whatever happened here has been erased. She grabs the first thing she sees on the table, a butcher knife. She doesn't plan to hide. If someone walks through that door while she's leaving, she's decided she will not hesitate. This does not end with her back in that box. She runs. Out the front door. Down the road. Toward the nearest house she can see. As she moves, she glances back. Gary Simmons is outside, near his car. He looks up toward the house. Brooke dives behind a bush in the neighbor's yard. Her body is shaking so badly, she thinks she might give herself away. She's certain this is the moment it ends. That he's seen her. She waits. Gary walks inside his house. Minutes pass. When he comes back out, he's moving fast. Brooke braces herself. But he doesn't search. He doesn't look around. He gets into his car and drives away. She knocks on the neighbor's door. Not long after, police arrive. Brooke is taken to the sheriff's department. It's there, sitting in a room she doesn't recognize, that she overhears fragments of a conversation she wasn't meant to hear. They're talking about the bayou, about remains, about how many pieces have been recovered. She was learning the truth indirectly, not from a formal explanation. Back in Texas, Jeffrey's father is packing a suitcase when his brother arrives. He doesn't ease into it. He puts an arm around him and tells him they won't let him see Jeffrey. That's when the words come out. Jeffrey's body was cut apart. 88 pieces. Still being searched for. His father collapses onto the edge of the bed. He cries until there's nothing left to hold in. He cannot understand why anyone would do this to his son. He never imagined he would be burying him. The same day Gary is on the run, Timothy Milano returns to Lori's apartment. Something is wrong immediately. His eyes don't focus. His voice sounds distant, like he's already somewhere else. Lori feels it in her chest before he says anything. She asks what Gary has done now. Timothy tells her he had no choice. That Gary threatened her. Threatened the children. He says he had to help him. That's the last time she sees her brother before he's taken away. He wasn't trying to explain. He was confessing. Timothy Milano is the one who pulled the trigger. He shot Jeffrey Wolf multiple times inside the Moss Point house. A few hours after Brooke escapes, Timothy turns himself in. When Jeffrey's father learns who has been arrested, his anger turns sharp. Timothy is not a stranger to him. He remembers welcoming him into his home, letting him stay, feeding him, washing his clothes, driving him places. He remembers thinking he was helping a young man. Now he knows that same young man killed his son. Authorities announce that 2 men are responsible for Jeffrey Wolf's death. One accused of the killing, the other accused of assaulting Brooke and imprisoning her inside the box. When Timothy is arrested at her apartment, Lori finally learns what happened inside the house she once lived in. The house she escaped, and the horror she thought she left behind. Lori can't make sense of it. Not her brother. Not the violence. Not how quickly everything collapsed into something unrecognizable. And Gary is still out there somewhere. Missing. Unaccounted for. The crime happened the day after they were supposed to mark their anniversary. That detail stays with her. She starts wondering if this was coincidence or timing. If he's finished or if she's next. The next day, while Lori is at work, a package arrives with her name on it. Inside is a videotape. Gary is on the screen again. Calm. Direct. Speaking as if he's explaining something that already happened and can't be changed. He says he never thinks about consequences until afterward. Says crossing a line always has a cost. Says it's time. He tells her he loves her. It didn't sound like fear. It sounded like resignation. That same day, Gary Simmons contacts police and turns himself in. When officers arrest him, he's only a few blocks away from Lori's workplace. Authorities describe the killing as the most disturbing case Jackson County has ever seen. Investigators say Jeffrey Wolf was shot, dismembered, and scattered in a nearby bayou. In October of 1996, Gary Simmons and Timothy Milano are formally charged with capital murder. The case doesn't go to trial right away. Nearly a year passes, and during that time, everything depends on one person. Brooke. She is the only surviving witness. Even with Gary behind bars, fear doesn't loosen its grip. Brooke believes he's still reaching for her. That someone could be sent. That silence could be permanent. She never assumed prison meant distance. The trial begins in late August of 1997. When Brooke takes the stand, Gary is only a few feet away. The last time she saw him, he was sealing her inside a box. Her body reacts before her mind does. Shaking. Uncontrollable. Her hands. Her legs. She tries to still herself by sitting on her own hands, but it doesn't stop. She notices Jeffrey's parents in the courtroom. They're there. Watching. Listening. If they can sit through this, she tells herself, then she can speak. She won't let this end quietly. 3 days later, the jury returns. It doesn't take long. Gary Simmons is found guilty on all counts. The murder, the confinement, the abuse. Timothy Milano is also convicted for shooting Jeffrey multiple times and for his role in the kidnapping. Timothy receives a life sentence without parole. Gary is sentenced to death. But for Brooke, the verdict doesn't bring relief. In her mind, if Gary could try to silence her once, he could do it again. Even from prison. She disappears from her old life. Changes her name. Alters her appearance. Cuts her hair. Dyes it dark. Moves. Then moves again. Years pass like this. Always looking over her shoulder. She doesn't just run from Gary. She runs from his family. From Lori. From the idea that his children might one day hate her for what happened to their father. The calendar moves forward anyway. It's now 2023. 27 years since she escaped the box. Brooke has a family of her own. a life that exists outside survival. But fear still lingers. Then, during preparations for an interview, she's told something unexpected. Lori has asked to meet her. Brooke hesitates, then agrees. They meet face to face for the first time. She needed to see her. That mattered. Lori doesn't accuse. She doesn't question. She thanks her. Tells her she's a hero. Says her children are alive because of her. Says she is alive because of her. Brooke listens. She hadn't thought of it that way before. The meeting doesn't erase the past, but it reframes it. For the first time, Brooke says the words without flinching. She is not ashamed. What happened to her doesn't define her. She is Brooke Weber, not a victim, a survivor. Story 5. Christy Wilson was 27. Smart. Focused. The kind of person who noticed patterns before other people even realized there were patterns to see. At the casino, that mattered. She wasn't there to wander or watch. She played with intent. Blackjack tables were familiar territory, almost comforting. Cards. Counts. Quiet calculations running behind her eyes. She knew when to sit down. She knew when to walk away. That night, someone noticed her. Not right away. Not in a way that would trigger alarm. Just a man lingering too close, watching longer than necessary. Waiting. When Christy finally took a seat at his table, the shift was subtle. Almost untraceable. A moment where her focus slipped. Her posture changed. Something went slightly off-center. She had only ordered one drink. Just one. After that, her behavior didn't match the person people knew. Her reactions slowed. Her expressions dulled. She seemed confused, like she was trying to follow a conversation that kept moving out of reach. The man leaned in. Too close. Close enough to make her pull away. He didn't. What Christy couldn't know was that the drink had already been tampered with. By the time she realized something wasn't right, her body was no longer cooperating. In the parking lot, security cameras caught fragments. Her resisting. His grip tightening. Her trying to create space where there was none. She didn't know his history. Didn't know he had done this before. Didn't know people had already disappeared around him. That night, Christy Wilson vanished. It's strange how ordinary the footage looks. Nothing about it feels urgent until you know what happens next. Investigators later traced her movements through surveillance. Christy leaving the casino. An older man beside her. Walking together, not because she chose to, but because she couldn't stop it. Her family was left with questions that had no shape yet. Alive or dead, voluntary or forced, gone for a reason they couldn't see. Her mother, Debbie, refused to wait quietly. She didn't speak like someone prepared to accept uncertainty. She spoke like someone already bracing for impact. Every call she made carried the same demand beneath it. Find her. Now. That urgency didn't fade when the answers became darker. Because the man connected to Christy wasn't just a suspect in a single disappearance. He was a thread running through other crimes. Other victims. A pattern that had been hiding in plain sight. Debbie didn't step back when she learned that. She leaned forward. I remember thinking, if I stop pushing, she stays missing. That wasn't an option. Days earlier, life had still felt open-ended. On the 4th of October, 2005, Christy had called her mother just to talk. Halloween was coming. She loved holidays. She had dressed her cat in a small costume and sent a photo, laughing about it. There was hope in her voice. She had been laid off from her tech job months before. It had shaken her. But now there was an interview scheduled. Just 2 days away. A fresh start. Something solid again. She was planning ahead. At the time, Christy was drifting between places, sometimes staying with her ex-boyfriend. The new job would take her to San Francisco. She talked about the move with excitement, even though it meant leaving something behind. The casino outside Sacramento. Thunder Valley had been her proving ground. A place where skill paid off. Where preparation mattered more than luck. Christy approached blackjack analytically. She didn't chase losses. She tracked probability, counted cards, waited for the numbers to tilt in her favor before making a move. On good nights, she walked away with around $5,000, sometimes more. That evening, she went back one last time. One more session before the interview. Before the move. Before everything changed. Late that night, around 10:30, she called her ex and said she was heading home. She never arrived. The next day, he called her again. And again. By the end, he had tried 72 times. The final message he left sat unanswered. 2 days after she disappeared, Debbie and her husband received the call they had been dreading. Police explained the limits. Christy was an adult. There was no immediate evidence she hadn't left on her own. No forced entry. No witness statement that clearly crossed the line. Her struggles with depression complicated everything. It introduced doubt where there shouldn't have been any. But Debbie saw something else. Christy had been trying to pull herself out. The interview. The move. The plans. Those weren't the actions of someone preparing to disappear. While going through her daughter's belongings, Debbie found notebooks. Dozens of them. Page after page in Christy's handwriting. All focused on blackjack. Strategies. Calculations. Systems refined over time. Obsessive in their detail. It was painful to admit, but the passion may have crossed into something heavier. Something that had quietly taken up too much space. That realization didn't slow Debbie down. It sharpened her. When I saw the notebooks, I didn't think she was running. I thought she was building something, and someone interrupted it. Her ex said she'd left around 10:30 that night. That was the time stamped in his memory. The phone call. The casual certainty of it. But investigators couldn't rely on memory alone. What if she hadn't left? What if the cards kept her there longer than she intended? What if whatever happened to her began before she ever reached the parking lot? Thunder Valley wasn't short on cameras. More than 700 of them. Hallways, tables, entrances, corners no one thought to look at. Pulling that much footage wasn't immediate. It took time to flag, copy, and organize everything worth seeing. While that process crawled forward, detectives followed Debbie's instinct instead. She kept repeating the same thing. Christy wouldn't just walk away. Not like that. Not without her cat. They checked the apartment. The cat was still there. So was her suitcase. Her medication. The everyday items people don't abandon when they decide to disappear. That was enough. Police went back to the casino and started watching. At first, the footage offered nothing dramatic. Christy arrived just before 7 in the evening. She went to the ATM, cashed out for chips, sat down at a blackjack table. Calm. Focused. Winning. Then someone else appeared in the frame. A short, broad man with dark hair, standing near the slot machines. Not playing. Watching. He drifted closer over time. Eventually took a seat at a nearby blackjack table. Christy moved tables a few times that night, but she ended up beside him. He acted familiar fast. High fives when she won. A hand on her back. Lingering touches that didn't quite cross a line, until they did. Casino employees who knew Christy noticed it immediately when they reviewed the tapes later. Her rhythm broke. She started losing. Her reaction slowed. She seemed confused, distracted. Not herself. Her stepfather, a police sergeant in San Jose, watched the footage too. He didn't need training to see it. Something was wrong. She didn't look reckless. She looked impaired. That's a big difference. As the hours passed, the man grew bolder. His arms stayed around her shoulders. His hand moved to her legs. He leaned into her space, even when she pulled away. Close to 11, after nearly 5 hours inside, Christy finally shoved him back and stood up. Cameras showed her stepping aside, making a phone call. This was when she told her ex she was about to leave. But she didn't. She went back to the table. By then, the change was unmistakable. She appeared intoxicated, even though staff records showed she'd only had one drink that night. A drink the man had brought to her. Around 1 in the morning, things escalated. Christy argued with a dealer. Security was called. Voices were raised. People stared. The man inserted himself into the situation, telling security he would take care of it, that he'd walk her out. They let him. As they headed toward the exit, the footage grew harder to watch. He grabbed her, pulled her close. She pushed him away again and again, her movements unsteady, his grip firm. Then they moved into an area without camera coverage. Investigators called it the black hole, and that's where Christy disappeared. Once they step out of frame, there's nothing left to follow. Just questions. When Patrick explained what the cameras showed, Debbie struggled to process it. The pieces didn't fit together cleanly. Why was Christy still there? Who was that man? What had he done to her? Where could she be now? But one question sat heavier than the rest. The one she asked publicly, not long after, when cameras turned toward her instead. Police didn't have the luxury of chasing every possibility. They focused on one goal. Find Christy. Search teams moved into the open land surrounding the casino. Fields. Roadsides. areas people usually drove past without noticing. Debbie and Christie's sister joined the search. 3 days had already passed. Every hour that went by made hope feel thinner. Debbie barely resembled the person she had been before. Until something shifted. While reviewing casino records, investigators noticed the man hadn't been as invisible as he thought. He'd used a slot machine that required a membership card. That card had a name attached to it. Mario Garcia, 53 years old. When the Boyds heard it, Debbie changed. The fear hardened into something else. Determination. Direction. Once there's a name, it's different. You're not chasing a shadow anymore. To Debbie, it was obvious. Someone knew what happened. Someone had been with Christie when she vanished. And his name was Mario Garcia. Police were more cautious. Garcia didn't fit the image they were used to. He wasn't transient. He wasn't known to them. He had a family, coached soccer, owned a large ranch nearby. On paper, he looked stable, ordinary, the kind of person neighbors defended without hesitation. His family insisted there was no way he could be involved. Still, detectives ran his background. What they found was thin. One minor misdemeanor from decades earlier. Nothing violent. Nothing recent. Nothing that explained why Christie Wilson never came home. When detectives finally reached out to a previous victim, a woman named Wendy, they realized the record they had seen barely scratched the surface. She was 52 when she spoke to them. Calm. Direct. Tired in a way that suggested she'd carried this for decades. In her mid-20s, Wendy had been in a relationship with Mario Garcia. At first, she said, he seemed attentive. Gentle even. The kind of partner who could switch moods easily. Until the switch went the other way. The violence didn't arrive all at once. It built. Sudden rages. Loss of control. Moments that ended with apologies that sounded rehearsed. When Wendy finally tried to leave, Garcia responded with force. He sexually assaulted her. Not long after, she told him to stop calling her, stop showing up, stop pushing back into her life. He didn't listen. In broad daylight, Garcia drove to her home, forced her into his van, and took her. She was assaulted again in the back of the vehicle. Then he drove her to his apartment and dragged her inside. There was a gun present. Unloaded, as it turned out, but Wendy didn't know that at the time. What stayed with her most wasn't the weapon. It was the realization that whether it fired or not, she could have been killed anyway. She collapsed on the floor, crying. The assault happened again. Afterward, Garcia walked into the kitchen and made himself a sandwich. No urgency. No visible emotion. As if the night had been ordinary. That detail always sticks. The normalcy of it, like nothing had just happened. Wendy pressed charges. At first, prosecutors aimed high. Kidnapping. Multiple counts of sexual assault. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. But the case dragged. Years passed. Evidence dulled. Momentum faded. In the end, only one charge remained. Probation followed. Later still, the conviction was reduced to a misdemeanor. Garcia shed his felon status and moved on with his life. On paper, his record looked almost clean again. But Wendy wasn't finished talking. She told detectives about the woman who came after her. Lynette Smith. Lynette had been Garcia's next girlfriend. On Christmas Eve, 1979, during a family dinner, Lynette told him she was leaving. She was pregnant. She'd endured years of beatings. She said she wouldn't keep the child. No one knows what Garcia said in response. Later that night, Lynette, her mother, and Garcia were in a car together near the Oakland estuary. What happened inside the vehicle remains unclear. Who was driving? Who spoke? Who didn't? Witnesses later described the car pulling over, reversing, turning toward the water, then accelerating. It went straight into the estuary. Police arrived quickly. Garcia was found in the water, alive. There was no sign of Lynette, no sign of her mother. Garcia didn't mention them at first. Not until much later, during formal questioning. And once he did, he immediately asked for a lawyer and stopped talking. That pause before he mentioned anyone else. That's hard to ignore. Lynette's body surfaced a week later. Her mother was found dead inside the car. Garcia was never charged. He claimed he wasn't driving. Claimed he had somehow slept through the crash. Claimed ignorance so complete it bordered on impossible. Detectives listening to Wendy struggled to process it. The man they'd initially viewed as an unlikely suspect now carried the weight of repeated violence and a death that had never been answered for. When they asked Wendy how she knew so much, she explained simply. Lynette's brother had been a childhood friend. Years earlier, She'd asked him casually how his sister was doing. The answer stunned her. After Wendy finished speaking, police moved quickly. Garcia was arrested. They still didn't have direct footage showing what happened to Christy after the cameras lost her. No final image. No clear moment of proof. But for Debbie, that didn't matter anymore. After hearing Wendy's account, the line between doubt and certainty disappeared. Someone had done this. And now that someone was finally within reach. When Garcia was taken into custody, detectives noticed injuries. Cuts along his face. Scratches on his neck. One eye swollen and darkened. He explained it away easily. An accident, he said. The day after Christy disappeared, Garcia arrived late to work, then left after barely an hour. And for investigators, that explanation only raised more questions than it answered. Something else didn't line up. Garcia claimed he'd been clearing trees overnight. That was his explanation for the scratches. But co-workers said he already had those marks when he showed up to work the next morning. And an emergency room doctor, someone who had been seated near him and Christy at the casino the night before, couldn't remember seeing a single cut on his face then. That detail mattered, because if the injuries weren't there earlier, then they happened later. And his story collapsed under its own weight. There was no reason for a manager to be doing yard work in the middle of the night. No reason at all. Still, one problem refused to go away. There was no body. If Debbie wanted justice, the case would have to move forward without knowing where Christy was. And so far, no one had found even a trace of where Garcia might have taken her. So investigators turned back to the parking lot, to the missing minutes, the space between cameras, the black hole. The cameras there didn't stay fixed. They rotated. Each cycle lasted 3 minutes and 41 seconds, leaving brief windows where sections of the lot disappeared from view. Garcia's car barely showed up on a secondary angle. Just the taillights. No clear shape. No license plate. Almost nothing. Almost. He had parked in what looked like a blind spot. Whether that was luck or planning didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the car itself. Garcia drove a Toyota Camry. Early 2000s models had a small quirk. The lights would flash depending on how many doors were opened. On the footage, during that blind interval, investigators counted for distinct flash patterns. Every door. For more than 3 minutes. Then, just before the camera rotated back into place, the car pulled away. It's a tiny thing. The kind of detail you'd miss if you weren't already looking hard. Garcia later said he went straight home. The cameras disagreed. Instead of driving toward his residence, he headed in the opposite direction. Another lie added to the stack. By then, no one involved believed there would be a confession. So they prepared for something else. A trial without a body. The first of its kind in North Sacramento. No remains. No murder weapon. Just circumstance layered on circumstance, all pointing the same way. The trial began in late September 2006, a little more than a year after Christy vanished. In the courtroom, Wendy Ward met Debbie and her family for the first time. She stayed close to them throughout the proceedings, not as a witness alone, as someone who understood what Garcia left behind. I didn't plan to do that. I just kept hugging them. It felt like the right thing. The jury saw the casino footage. This time it landed differently. Investigators had searched Garcia's computer. After Christy disappeared, he had looked up information about drugs slipped into drinks. How long they stayed in the body. How quickly they cleared. The timing was impossible to ignore. Debbie heard that and felt something settle. Christy's behavior that night wasn't random. It wasn't stress. It wasn't alcohol. It was interference. But the most powerful evidence didn't come from a screen. It came from the back seat of Garcia's car. He had tried to clean it with bleach. Thoroughly. But bleach doesn't erase everything. Tiny strands of Christy's hair remained. Microscopic traces of her blood too. And then there were the injuries. Garcia's scratches weren't shallow. They weren't accidental. They matched something Patrick Boyd had seen before. Christy had trained. Kickboxing classes. Self-defense tips from her stepfather. Things like aiming for the eyes if someone attacked her. Fighting back in ways that left marks. Years earlier, when another man had assaulted her, police documented the aftermath. Scratches. Bruises. For deep claw marks across his chest. The same pattern Garcia carried after Christy disappeared. When they showed those photos, it felt like she was still speaking. The prosecution didn't rush. They didn't need to. They walked the jury through Garcia's lies. His alibi. The footage. The searches. The DNA. The wounds. They didn't have to show where Christie was taken. They only had to show what she endured. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned. Guilty. Relief passed through the room, but it didn't feel like celebration. Justice had been reached, yes, but it was incomplete. Garcia was going to prison. Christie was still missing. And whatever happened after the cameras went dark, went with him. There was no happiness in that ending. Only an answer to one question. And silence where the rest should have been. The verdict never felt like a win. Not really. Even after the sentence, even after the courtroom emptied out, the truth stayed the same. Christie was gone. No ruling could change that. She had been sharp, curious, full of plans that were already in motion, and someone had taken all of it away. That absence never softened. Debbie kept asking the same question. Out loud. In public. In rooms where answers should exist. Where did you put my daughter? Where did you put my daughter? There was never a response. At sentencing, Wendy stood beside Debbie, Patrick, and Christie's sister. Because of delays and unresolved aspects tied to Wendy's earlier case, the judge revisited Garcia's punishment and extended it dramatically. What had once been a 25-year sentence became 59. Enough to ensure he would never leave prison alive. Garcia didn't take it quietly. When given the chance to speak, he refused remorse. Said he wouldn't beg, wouldn't ask for mercy. Debbie spoke after him. Her words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. She said she believed he had killed her daughter. That she believed he would do it again if given the chance. And that if Christie's resistance had helped stop that, then her daughter had saved someone else too. It wasn't about anger. It sounded like certainty. The sentence didn't end the story. Every few years, Garcia appealed. Each time, the Boyds were pulled back into courtrooms, statements, memories they never wanted to reopen. Then in 2017, something new happened. Garcia began writing directly to Debbie. The letters didn't include apologies. No admissions. But there were hints. Suggestions that information might exist. That answers could be traded. Was she in water? Was she buried somewhere, left unseen for years? Debbie didn't sleep through a single night without wondering. She wanted Christie back so badly that she considered it, just to see where it went. Just in case. She didn't fool herself. More than a decade had passed. She knew her daughter was dead. What she wanted now was to turn the page. To stop wondering. But closure came with a price. And she had to decide whether she could afford it. Nothing came of Garcia's attempts. But the case reopened anyway. Detectives returned to people they'd spoken to years earlier, including Garcia's wife. His children, now adults. Time had changed their view of him. They no longer defended him. His son, Chris, mentioned something small. Something that hadn't seemed important at the time. A few days after Christie vanished, there had been a soccer game. Garcia had coached for years and never missed one. That day he didn't show. When Chris went looking for him, he found his father far from the house, working on a tractor. Dirty, agitated, distracted. When asked if he was coming, Garcia barely looked up. Said no. Back then it didn't register. Now it did. During the original search years earlier, cadaver dogs had covered Garcia's property. 5 acres. Nothing turned up. This time, investigators returned to the area Chris pointed out. They brought ground-penetrating radar. It didn't take long. Something was there. They began digging. Deep. Nearly 20 feet down, they uncovered a bone. An archaeologist was called to confirm what it was. For 15 years, the same 2 detectives had carried Christie's case. When the confirmation came back human, both men dropped to their knees. I don't think either of them expected that moment to actually arrive. They kept digging. An entire skeleton emerged. Forensic analysis confirmed it was Christie. The bones told their own story. A broken hand. A fractured nose. Evidence of a struggle. Proof she had fought back before she was killed. That night, detectives went to Debbie and Patrick's home. They told them their daughter had been found. The next day, Debbie and Patrick spoke publicly. They thanked the detectives who had never let the case go cold, who had carried it for 15 years without answers. Christie was finally brought home. On the anniversary of her death, Debbie had her cremated. A quiet goodbye. A resting place at last. But the loss didn't stop with her family. At the memorial, Christie's best friend, Tiffany, stood in front of the crowd. She remembered something Christie had said a year before she disappeared. Words that lingered now with a different weight. Almost as if Christie had written them for this moment, without knowing it. Story 6. A few days from now, paperwork will be signed. Ink on paper. A legal step that turns a household into something official. A daughter becomes his by law. From the outside, it looks settled, calm, complete. Inside a Miami hotel, Ben moves the way people do when they think they are alone. Down the hall, out the door, back again. Nothing rushed, nothing cautious. He does not see the two men adjusting their pace to match his. He does not know they memorize when he leaves, when he returns, how long the hallway cameras lose them. They trail him through common spaces, elevators, corners without coverage. Even when he steps outside, the distance stays tight, close enough to keep him in sight, far enough not to be noticed. Over the next days, they return. Same building, same floor. This time they don't bother keeping space. Security cameras later show the two men exiting the hotel. Calm, unhurried. Ben never appears on the footage again. Hours pass, then more. Eventually, his family forces the door. Ben is found dead inside his room. Nothing that should tempt a thief is taken. Not the Rolex, not the gold chains, not the cash. For a man known around Miami for his wealth, the silence of the scene raises more questions than answers. Who follows someone without stealing from them? And why? It didn't look like a robbery. That's what stood out right away. A week later, another camera records movement. This time not in Miami. Fort Lauderdale, Ben's home, miles from where he was killed. The person on screen is his stepdaughter, May. She moves through the house slowly, touching things, opening drawers, looking for something unnamed. Answers, maybe, or reassurance. She doesn't know she's already being watched. What she doesn't know is that someone else is there, waiting. Her mother. Narky stands holding a crowbar. Before that moment, before the cameras and the silence and the waiting, there was another arrival. 1982. Narky and her daughter land in Miami after leaving Ecuador behind. May is 4 years old. Her father had already gone, long before she could remember him. It becomes just the two of them. No safety net. No family nearby. The move is supposed to mean possibility. Instead, it means work. Whatever work can be found. Narky stitches clothes. Long hours. Low pay. When it isn't enough, she finds another job. One that pays more. One that keeps her out late, surrounded by strangers. Miami's club scene offers fast cash and faster nights. The bills get paid. Something else quietly erodes. May grows up watching men come and go. Faces blur together. None of them stay long enough to matter. Home never settles. It just resets. Then Ben walks in. He doesn't rush. He doesn't disappear after a few weeks. He asks questions. He listens. He shows up. He notices May. He likes comic books. Batman especially. So does she. She's 9. It matters. For the first time, there's a routine. A sense of being expected somewhere. Ben marries Narky, and the shape of the family hardens into something real. It felt stable. That was new for her. Ben treats May like a daughter without needing to say it out loud. She starts calling him her father. Not as a favor. As a fact. Money stops being a daily worry. Narky leaves the club. Evenings become predictable. Weekends feel safe. Ben comes from old Miami money. His father once owned one of the city's most famous luxury hotels. In the 1950s, it hosted Frank Sinatra, Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, and John F. Kennedy. Galas, movie premieres, a certain kind of access. That legacy opens doors. Ben builds a business around conferences and luxury events. High-end hotels, big crowds, bigger expectations. Narky becomes the face people remember. Names, drinks, children, small details that make clients feel seen. The business grows fast. So does the lifestyle. A waterfront home in Fort Lauderdale. A yacht stretching 60 feet across the water. Vacations that don't require checking balances first. From the outside, it looks earned, smooth, untouchable. And somewhere inside that success, something else has already started moving. Quietly, patiently. When everything looks perfect, that's usually when people stop looking closely. Narky's tastes shift as the money settles in. Designer labels. Carefully chosen pieces. Ben goes the opposite direction. Backward, almost. Toward the thing he loved as a kid. Batman. He spends freely on it. Original artwork. Props. Costumes sealed behind glass. Then something bigger. A real Batmobile. The same model from the 1960s television series. Parked not as a joke, not as irony, but as fulfillment. While that world grows around him, Ben and May grow closer in quieter ways. May is an adult now. She has children of her own. 2 boys. They run through Ben's house, climb on furniture, line up action figures. To them, he is simply Grandpa Ben. The man with the toys. The patience. The time. For the first time in her life, May feels steady. Not temporary. Not waiting for something to fall apart. Her family feels finished. Complete. Ben, who never had biological children, asks her for something that surprises no one who knows them. He wants to make it legal. Adoption. A final step that matches what already exists. May doesn't hesitate. There's no discussion, no weighing of options. This is what she has always thought of as true anyway. It didn't feel like a change. It felt like putting a name on something that already was. Spring of 2009 interrupts everything. Ben's mother, Bernice, doesn't answer her phone. Not once. Not twice. A neighbor notices. The door. The car. Something isn't right. The Novak family is called. When Ben enters the house, the air shifts. His mother is on the floor near the kitchen. Face down. Still. Blood is spread beneath her. Outside, details stack up in fragments. The car nearby. The door open. Broken glasses on the ground. Blood inside the car. Blood on the pavement. Bernice is 86 years old. Investigators move quickly to a conclusion. A fall. A loss of balance while exiting the car. A head injury. No one around to help. No call made. No intervention possible. By the time she's found, she's gone. Nothing appears disturbed. No forced entry. No missing items. No signs of struggle. The case closes almost as soon as it opens. Narki is devastated. She pushes it down. Holds herself upright for Ben, who cannot. Bernice's death lands heavier than expected. Because something doesn't sit right with Ben. He replays it. The layout. The timing. The way it happened. The certainty with which it was dismissed. He cannot make peace with it. He decides not to accept the explanation. A private investigator is contacted. Ben's voice carries strain. Urgency. He wants another set of eyes. Someone who isn't done looking yet. They plan to talk properly once Ben returns from a business trip. A major convention, just outside New York City. High profile. Carefully planned. Narki and May are both involved. Life continues. Carefully. As if holding something fragile. July 9th, 2009. The family boards a flight north, unaware that nothing beyond this point will remain intact. They were already carrying grief when they left. They just didn't know how much more was waiting. Early morning, July 12th. Ben has been awake all night. Final schedules. Last adjustments. He finally lies down, exhausted, as the day begins. Narki and May head to breakfast. Narki eats fast. Distracted. She leaves before May is finished. Minutes later, May's phone rings. Security. They ask her to come upstairs. Room 452. Her parents' suite. Now. She moves quickly. Thoughts jumble. No explanation makes sense yet. When she reaches the parlor, the noise hits first. Officers. Movement. Someone nearby says something she doesn't understand. Bloodbath. The word feels wrong. Unreal. Narki is screaming. Uncontrolled. Raw. Then May sees the feet. On the bedroom floor. Still. Covered in blood. A police officer steps in front of her. Speaks. Her father is dead. The room fills with activity. Cameras. Gloves. Photographs. Investigators spread out, pulling footage from hotel security, tracking movement through hallways and elevators. Narki is separated, taken to a quiet room, asked to explain what she saw, what she did, how she found him. She says she walked in, tripped over something, looked down, and for a moment her mind rejected it, because Ben wouldn't be on the floor. Not like that. Something in Narcy reacts before thought catches up. She runs into the hallway, yelling, banging on doors. Anyone. Everyone. Her voice carries down the corridor, sharp and broken. Later, she will say only a monster could do something like this. While Narcy is questioned inside, May sits outside the room. Alone. The shock hasn't settled yet. Her mind keeps circling backward, searching for a place where this could have started. A face. A moment. Anything. She thinks about Ben's comics. The people who came to the house because of them. Collectors. Dealers. Strangers who knew exactly what he owned. That was the first place my mind went. The comics. Inside the interrogation room, Narcy offers the same thought. She tells detectives Ben had been negotiating a sale. One rare comic in particular, worth roughly $43,000. There had been tension, disagreements. She suggests a collector might have followed him, might have found a way into the room. It sounds possible, briefly, until detectives walk the suite. Nothing is missing. Jewelry sits where it was left. Designer sunglasses untouched. Cash still inside. Watches remain on the table. Even parts of the Batman collection are still there. A Rolex, a Cartier, all ignored. The idea of a robbery begins to collapse under its own weight. If someone came for money, they walked right past it. With that theory thinning out, attention drifts back toward Narcy. The questions shift. Marriage, stress, conflict, motive. She talks about love, about partnership, about not knowing how she will function without him. Detectives listen, but they keep digging. They need a timeline, something firm. Narcy explains her morning. She left the suite just before 7 o'clock to manage breakfast for convention guests. She says she was gone about half an hour. When she returned, Ben was already dead. They check it. Camera footage places her where she said she was. Door locks confirm entry and exit times. Her key card opens the door when she says it did. Her story holds. With Narcy cleared and no clear suspect, the case stalls. May feels it slipping away. The longer the silence stretches, the more permanent it feels. She cycles through anger, confusion, fear. None of it lands anywhere useful. It felt like time was just passing, and nothing was moving. Investigators choose one last option. Everything. Every camera. Every angle. Every hour in the days leading up to the murder. It's overwhelming. The hotel is packed. Guests. Staff. Visitors. A major convention running at full speed. Thousands of faces. Thousands of hours. Rough estimates push past 2,000 possible people. No names. No focus. Then something shifts. At the estimated time of the killing, 2 figures appear on screen. Moving fast. Exiting the hotel. They don't belong there. Not in that moment. When detectives rewind, they see them again. Earlier days. Same men. Same movements. They aren't wandering. They're watching. Lingering in the lobby. Circling floors. Learning paths. At one point, they trail Ben just feet behind him. Seeing them that close was unsettling. The final piece comes from the room itself. A fragment of broken sunglasses. Small. Easy to miss. When detectives compare it to the footage, something lines up. One of the men in the lobby had been wearing sunglasses. On the day of the murder, he leaves without them. The shape matches. Suddenly, the silence around the case feels different. Because now, Ben was not alone that night. And someone had been watching him for a long time. On the footage, one detail keeps pulling their attention back. One of the men leaves the hotel without sunglasses. Earlier, he had them on. Now they're gone. They freeze the frame. Enhance what they can. It's still grainy. Surveillance never gives you what you want. Just enough to tease the edge of an answer. 2 men. Clear presence. No identities. The image is saved. Labeled. Set aside. And then nothing. Days turn into weeks. The faces remain nameless. No matches. No tips. No calls. The case starts to feel like it's thinning out, evaporating, leaving only questions behind. September 2nd, 2009. Ben Novak is buried at Mount Lebanon Cemetery in Queens. He's laid to rest beside his father, and beside his mother, Bernice. May stands there struggling to hold herself together. She says goodbye to the man who chose her, who became her father, who became a grandfather to her children. There are no answers waiting for her. No justice. Somewhere, whoever did this is still free. It felt unfinished, like the story just stopped in the middle. As the family grieves, investigators keep working. Quietly, methodically, they begin pulling threads from Ben's life, even the ones that don't seem connected. Eventually, someone circles back to Bernice. Ben's mother didn't die that long ago, just months before he did. At first, it was called an accident. But now, sitting beside an unsolved murder, the timing feels heavier. Less random. New York detectives reach out to Florida. They ask for everything. Photos, reports, notes. When they study the images, the story doesn't hold. Blood inside the vehicle. Patterns that don't match a simple fall. Impact marks where they shouldn't be. The scene didn't explain itself anymore. Then comes the autopsy report. And suddenly the picture shifts. Benice's injuries weren't minor. They were extensive. Fractures across her body. A skull injury. A broken finger. Teeth damaged. There are signs she tried to protect herself. This wasn't one bad fall. It was too much. What looked like an accident now reads like something else entirely. 2 deaths. Not one. Investigators step back. Reframe everything. Ask the questions they should have asked earlier. What is happening to this family? Who would want to dismantle it piece by piece? With Bernice's death reclassified as suspicious, a pattern starts to form. Someone isn't acting randomly. Someone is working quietly, deliberately. And if that's true, then the danger isn't over. Not for Narcy. Not for May. Not for the children. At that point, everyone left felt exposed. May feels it before anyone tells her. The sense of being watched. Followed. Threatened without words. She doesn't wait for confirmation. She moves. New apartment. New routines. Different paths. She keeps her children close and their lives small. Predictability becomes the enemy. But even in hiding, one thing doesn't let go. She wants answers. Then, without warning, the case lurches forward. More than 1,000 miles away from the hotel where Ben was killed, detectives in Miami receive a letter. No return address. Written in Spanish. The contents are unsettling. Details inside were never made public. Things only someone involved would know. That's when we realized it couldn't be ignored. The letter names a man. Cristobal Veliz. According to the writer, Cristobal ordered Ben's murder. Miami police run the name immediately. Records surface. An address. Philadelphia. They don't call ahead. They show up. Cristobal answers the door. Calm. Polite. He asks officers to wait while he goes to get dressed. As he steps away, detectives notice papers spread across the kitchen table. Not hidden. Not locked away. Money transfer receipts. Western Union. Payments sent out. Repeatedly. One name appears again and again. Alejandro Garcia. Florida. The detectives don't touch anything. They don't need to. They read. Memorize. Write the name down before Cristobal returns. Back in Miami, investigators begin searching for Alejandro Garcia. The problem becomes obvious fast. There are too many of them. Hundreds. Maybe more. The name alone isn't enough. Until one specific detail finally separates one Alejandro Garcia from all the others. And that detail changes everything. Door by door, the picture sharpens. In Miami, neighbors recognize the name attached to the money orders. Not the face. The detail. They remember that the Alejandro Garcia who received those payments only had one eye. Florida investigators take that fragment and run it through their system. A name. A physical marker. Missing an eye. This time, the search doesn't sprawl. It tightens. A match appears. They return to the hotel footage with purpose now. And there he is. One of the men who kept circling Ben in the days before the murder. Dark shirt. Standing beside another man. Always close. Always watching. Once you know who you're looking for, you can't unsee him. Frames from Friday are clearer than the rest. Clear enough to confirm it. Alejandro. Detectives learn something else. Alejandro almost always wore sunglasses. Not for style. For protection. His damaged eye was sensitive to light. They rewind again. First day of the convention. Sunglasses on as he enters the hotel. After the murder, when he leaves, they're gone. That missing detail finally clicks into place. The broken sunglasses found in Ben's room weren't random debris. They belonged to him. Now, for the first time, police say a name out loud. The hunt stops being abstract. Pressure builds fast. When confronted, Alejandro doesn't posture. He doesn't argue. He shakes his head, over and over, as if denying it might loosen the walls pressing in. Cameras place him there. Physical evidence places him there. Time places him there. And then he breaks. What he says next shifts the case in a direction no one expects. He tells investigators he was afraid. Not of prison, of the people who hired him. He says they're dangerous, that they don't forgive failure. Then he says he was hired for another job. Not Ben, a young woman. He reaches into his wallet and pulls out a photograph. It's May. That's when it stopped feeling theoretical. He had been given details. Her routine. Her car. Where she worked. Everything needed to make her disappear. Suddenly, the fear May felt makes sense. This wasn't paranoia. It was preparation. Investigators confirm it. A contract had been placed on her life. The person who ordered it was still free. If she stayed where she was, she and her children wouldn't be safe. While chaos closes in around May, one person seems untouched by it. Narcy. Through funerals, interrogations, fear, she remains steady, controlled, almost distant. Looking back, May remembers something small from the interrogation room. A detail that felt wrong even then, but didn't surface until now. A quiet certainty settles in her stomach. What if the person behind all of this isn't far away? What if she's been right there the whole time? May confronts her mother directly. Narcy denies everything. Flatly. Immediately. She didn't hesitate. That stayed with me. May knows the odds. Narcy's alibi was checked. Verified. Cleared. On paper, her mother looks innocent. But May can't let it go. Not after everything. She starts from the beginning. The house. Fort Lauderdale. Familiar rooms. Familiar walls. The moment she steps inside, instinct screams. Narcy swings the crowbar without warning. Full force. May throws her arm up just in time. Pain explodes through it, but she doesn't stop. She runs. Out the door. Down the street. Screaming. Neighbors come out. Doors open. Eyes turn. Narcy stops chasing. Too many witnesses. May is pulled to safety. And finally, investigators have what they've been missing. A living, breathing threat. As they dig deeper, the motive emerges. Ben's estate. In his will, Ben left his mother, Bernice, as the beneficiary of his $10 million estate. Not Narcy. And before his death, Ben had added May and her 2 sons to the will as well. Narcy would receive nothing. No inheritance. No fallback. No control. With that discovery, the picture locks into place. And for the first time, the story of Ben Novak's death begins to show its true shape. The agreement they signed years earlier was clear. If the marriage ended, Narcy would receive a modest settlement. About $65,000. Nothing close to the life she had grown used to. To gain access to Ben's fortune, one condition stood in the way. Everyone else had to be gone. His mother, Ben himself, May, and even the children. The motive is suddenly unmistakable. But motive alone isn't enough. There is still no physical proof tying Narcy directly to both deaths. No fingerprints. No footage. Nothing that places her hand on the crime. On paper, she's nearly escaped something airtight. Nearly. Investigators make a final move. They go back to Alejandro Garcia. Prosecutors offer him a deal. A drastically reduced sentence in exchange for one thing only. The truth. The whole truth. And this time he talks. He explains that he and his partner didn't force their way into Ben's suite. They didn't sneak. They didn't break a lock. The door opened. Narcy Novak was standing there. Ben was asleep inside. Unaware. Vulnerable. The men entered carrying weights and tape. Everything happened quickly. Ben never had a chance to fight back. He was restrained. Overpowered. At some point, Alejandro says Narcy spoke again. Asked if something had been done yet. Asked for proof. Ben was still alive. What followed is described without detail, but with finality. An act meant not just to kill, but to erase. That's when it stopped being about money and became something else entirely. Afterward, the 3 of them left the room calmly. Walked out, blended back into the hotel. Narcy believed the plan had worked. For a time it did, until Alejandro continued. He tells investigators there was another job. One completed months earlier. One that had already been dismissed as an accident. Bernice Novak. He describes following her into the garage. Waiting. Striking quickly. Being paid roughly $600 for it. Not much money. Just enough. With that statement, the last pieces fall into place. Investigators move fast. Narcy Novak is arrested and charged in connection with both deaths. Prosecutors allege the motive plainly. The killings were orchestrated so she could inherit millions tied to Ben's family estate. Now she waits for trial. She denies everything. Relentlessly. She contradicts evidence. Accuses others. Even claims at one point that Ben might not be dead at all. That nothing has been proven. Her statements spiral. That's when it felt like reality didn't matter to her anymore. But the case is already complete. Testimony. Surveillance. Financial records. The hitman's confession. A federal jury returns its verdict. Narcy Novak is convicted of causing the deaths of Ben Novak Jr. and his mother, Bernice. The courtroom is quiet when the decision is read. There is no celebration. Only relief. May listens as the chapter finally closes. She thinks about what was lost long before the money ever mattered. Her mother, her family, the future that could have existed. No matter what she did, she was still my mom. Narcy will spend the rest of her life in prison. She will not see her grandchildren grow up. She will not meet their children. She will miss weddings, birthdays, ordinary days that once filled her house. Time keeps moving without her. May keeps going. She heals slowly. She stays present for her boys. And later, she welcomes another child into the world. A third son. She names him after her father, Ben. In that choice, his memory continues. Not in fear, not in violence, but in love, and in the future he never got to see. Story 7. The voice on the porch is sharp, suspicious. What are you doing here? Whose house is this? Why are you standing there? The answer comes fast. Too fast. I'm an Uber driver. That explanation has become familiar in police reports. Between 2017 and 2020, Uber acknowledged close to 10,000 reports of assault in the United States, and more than 100 deaths connected to rides taken or given through the app. Most of those incidents never make headlines. They sit quietly in spreadsheets. This one doesn't stay quiet. In Michigan, a driver is suspected of moving through an ordinary Saturday night, picking up passengers and stopping, at random, to shoot people he has never met. By the time the pattern becomes visible, 6 people are already dead in Kalamazoo. The emergency lines flood. Not one call. Not 2. Dozens. Voices overlap. Panic bleeds into confusion. I asked the driver if he was the shooter. Please send an ambulance. She's on the ground. Don't move her. The kids are here. We heard gunshots right outside the apartment. Hello? Is anyone there? Dispatchers struggle to keep pace. Officers struggle to understand what they're chasing. The descriptions don't line up. The locations don't connect. It doesn't feel like one scene. It feels like many accidents happening at once. It was hard to tell at first if any of the calls were connected. They sounded like separate emergencies. Then one detail keeps returning. A teenager, 14 years old. Shot. Still breathing. Barely. Her name is Abby Koff. She is rushed to the hospital in critical condition. For a brief window of time, investigators believe she might survive long enough to speak. Long enough to point them in the right direction. Long enough to interrupt whatever is still unfolding out there. She doesn't. Later that night, doctors prepare her for organ donation. Her mother is at the bedside. Abby squeezes her hand once. That's the last movement she makes. It is 10 o'clock in the evening, February 20th, 2016. Earlier that night, Abby had been sitting at a table inside a Cracker Barrel restaurant. She's with her best friend, and with a woman she calls her grandmother, even though they aren't related by blood. 68-year-old Barbara Hawthorne. People often notice how comfortable Abby is with adults. She listens carefully. She asks thoughtful questions. She doesn't rush to fill silence. They've just come from a play downtown. Nothing heavy. Nothing dark. Just a normal night out. 3 of Barbara's friends have joined them for dinner before everyone heads home. In the parking lot, Barbara reminds Abby about their next knitting class. It's a small thing. The kind of detail that doesn't matter until later, when it's all that's left. Abby climbs into the front passenger seat. Barbara settles behind the wheel. 2 women take the back seat. Another steps into a van parked beside them. Then tires scream. A black car cuts in behind them, blocking the exit. No warning. No explanation. Just metal stopping metal. A single loud crack cuts through the air. Inside the car, screaming erupts all at once. Abby doesn't know what's happening, only that something is wrong enough to make her body move before her thoughts catch up. She slides down, folding herself between the seat and the floor. More shots follow. Louder. Closer. Glass explodes inward, spraying the inside of the car. Barbara leans over Abby without a word. She uses her body as a shield. Through the shattered rear window, Abby sees the shape of a gun. Smoke curling, pointed directly at her. 5 hours earlier, Kalamazoo looked ordinary. Winter is loosening its grip. The snow is melting. The air is warmer than it should be. In a suburban neighborhood, 25-year-old Tiana Carruthers is watching children. Her 7-year-old daughter, Kanaya. Her niece. 3 others. Tiana became a mother young. She's done it on her own. She's careful. Protective. used to making small decisions that keep everyone safe. When Kanaya asks to walk across the street to see a friend, Tiana agrees, but only if she goes with them. Shoes on. Jackets zipped. Eyes open. They don't make it far. A silver SUV races down the street and slams to a stop right in front of them. At that point, it still didn't feel like part of something bigger. Just one terrifying moment. The night is already moving faster than anyone realizes. Behind the wheel sits a large man. Gray hair, unkempt. His eyes don't blink the way they should. He looks straight at Tiana and says, flatly, that he's there to pick her up. Nothing about it fits. Not the words. Not the tone. She keeps her voice steady and tells him she didn't order an Uber. Without turning around, she tells the kids to keep walking. Don't stop. Don't look back. The SUV roars away, tires screaming against the pavement. For a split second, the street feels quiet again. Then the engine sound returns. The vehicle swings back around and stops in front of them. Tiana doesn't move. She can't. She watches the driver reach inside his jacket and pull something free. It's a gun. She doesn't remember shouting, only that suddenly she's telling the kids to run. Now, as fast as they can. He raises the weapon toward them. Time stretches. 5 children are in front of her. One of them is her daughter. She steps forward without thinking and places herself between the gun and the kids. She didn't describe making a decision. She described moving. After that suburban shooting, the driver disappears. He switches weapons. He switches vehicles. And then he keeps going. For the rest of the night, he moves between normal life and violence, picking up passengers, then pulling over, then shooting strangers who never see it coming. Police identify him quickly. 45-year-old Jason Dalton. By the time the night ends, 7 people have been shot. The last victims are in the Cracker Barrel parking lot. A 14-year-old girl named Abby Koff, and the woman who tried to save her. Barbara Hawthorne takes 3 bullets as she leans over Abby, pressing her down, using her own body as cover. Both are rushed to the hospital. Sirens. Blood loss. Doctors moving fast. Barbara doesn't make it. Abby does barely. She reaches the intensive care unit at Bronson Children's Hospital. Her mother, Vicky, gets the call. The voice on the other end is careful. Too careful. Where was she shot? Vicky asks. They won't answer. Is she dead? No. Then where was she shot? It's serious. Where? In the head. When Vicky and her husband arrive, the hospital is locked down. Security escorts them through corridors that feel too quiet. In the ICU room, Abby lies motionless. Her head is wrapped in thick bandages, darkened where the bullet shattered bone. Later, Vicky says it felt unreal. Like something staged. Like the worst scene from a horror movie she never wanted to see. An hour passes. Abby's heart stops. Doctors call the time. Nurses disconnect monitors. A white sheet is pulled up over her body. Vicky and her husband lean over their daughter, whispering goodbye, while preparations begin for organ donation. And then Vicky feels something. A movement. She says something to the nurse. She's told that bodies sometimes twitch after death. It's normal. She tries to accept that, but then she feels it again. She asks them to check, just to be sure. There's a pulse. Abby's heart has started beating again. No one expected that. Not the staff. Not the family. The room fills instantly. Doctors. Nurses. Machines humming back to life. Vicky wants to hope, but a nurse gently pulls her aside. Even if Abby survives, there may be no brain activity. No awareness. No recovery. Vicky sits by the bed and takes her daughter's hand. She tells her it's Mama. She tells her to give a sign if she can hear anything at all. Minutes pass. Then Abby's fingers move. Slightly. Almost nothing. She traces the shape of a letter into her mother's palm. A.B. Later, when Abby is able to communicate more clearly, she asks about Grandma Barb. She doesn't know yet that Barbara died protecting her. Police believe Barbara's actions saved Abby's life. While Abby fights to stay alive, Jason Dalton keeps moving through the city. Police stop car after car, matching the description. 10 vehicles. Nothing. Until one car begins driving strangely. Avoiding patrols. Turning when it shouldn't. Officers follow. A brief chase. Tight streets. Then the car pulls over. They approach slowly. Body armor on. Weapons drawn. Expecting anything. Instead, the driver pushes his arms out through the window. He surrenders. After that, the questions shifted. Not just what he did, but what state of mind he was in when he did it. With the suspect in custody, investigators turn inward, trying to understand how an ordinary night turned into a citywide hunt for a killer who never stopped driving. By this point, investigators aren't worried about proving he did it. They already have that. What worries them is something else entirely. If Jason is declared legally insane, the courtroom disappears. Prison disappears. What replaces it is a hospital bed, and time that could be measured in years instead of decades. So they let him talk. They don't interrupt when he says a demon took control of him. They don't argue when he claims his phone transformed into a horned face, whispering instructions, steering his hands. They nod. They listen. They keep him comfortable enough to keep going. With every interview, his behavior unravels further. His stories stretch, twist, repeat. No one in the room believes him, but they don't show it. They need him talking long enough to contradict himself. Eventually, he does. They start walking him backward through the night. Not in order. Not cleanly. Just fragments. One location at a time. One victim at a time. When he reaches the Cracker Barrel parking lot, he lingers. He talks about Abby. About Barbara. He describes it like a story he's told himself many times. Every action justified. Every bullet explained away by the same excuse. The demon made me do it. They weren't listening for drama. They were listening for control. To dismantle an insanity defense, they need someone who saw him up close. Someone who watched him choose. Someone who survived. Abby survives, but she's placed into a medically induced coma. She can't testify. Not yet. Jason keeps talking. Eventually, he circles back to the beginning. His first victim. The one who didn't fit his story as neatly. Tiana Carruthers. He describes her shooting with a strange kind of pride. As if it proved something. As if surviving made her less important. Tiana's injuries are catastrophic. Bullets tear through both legs. Her shoulder shatters. One round embeds itself in her liver, where it will stay permanently. Paramedics arrive just in time. Minutes later, and she would have bled out on the pavement. Surgeons rebuild her body with metal. Bolts. Plates. Hardware meant to replace what can't heal on its own. She spends months learning how to stand again. How to walk. How to trust her body. When she's strong enough, she speaks publicly. The story goes national. The headlines repeat the same phrases. Uber driver. Rampage. Random victims. During one interview, the host introduces her quietly. Calls her brave. Calls her a hero. She doesn't correct him. She never described herself that way. Other people did. By the time Jason Dalton's case moves forward, Tiana is expected to testify. The year is 2019. Cameras wait outside the courthouse. Inside, everything feels smaller. Tighter. She's the first witness called. She's also the only survivor who can describe what it was like to stand in front of him while he was still deciding who would live. The courtroom is silent when she begins. Her voice falters. She describes seeing him pull up. Seeing the gun. Seeing the moment when running wasn't an option. At one point, the judge interrupts. Asks if she needs a break. She tries to continue. But the memory pulls her back. Not metaphorically. Physically. Her breathing changes. Her hands shake. The playground comes rushing in all at once. She breaks down. The judge allows time. The courtroom waits. No one rushes her. You could feel how heavy it was. Like everyone understood what it cost her to be there. When she resumes, she doesn't speak for herself. She speaks for the children who ran. For the people who can't testify at all. After the hearing, Tiana talks about what helped her survive the months that followed the shooting. Writing. Quiet moments. Putting words where memories kept looping. One of those pieces is a poem. Written during recovery. Addressed to her mother. It isn't polished. It isn't meant for court. It starts with a question. Do you see me? Do you really see me? Can you be my mother for once? And then it keeps going, uneven, honest, unfinished. Like someone trying to breathe through pain instead of around it. The case continues. The city watches. And the night Jason Dalton tried to explain away keeps coming back. Not as a story about demons, but as a record of choices made while fully awake. The poem continues in fragments. Half jokes. Half wounds that never closed. I fed them, by the way. Hey Mom. Mother. Can you hear me? I'm right here. The words stumble forward. She talks to someone who isn't listening. Someone who drifts in and out, but somehow never forgets to remind her about chores. No hug. No kiss. Just absence, dressed up as love. That absence shaped everything. Tiana's mother struggled with addiction for most of her childhood. There were long stretches when she simply wasn't there. By the age of 7, Tiana was the one cooking, cleaning, watching over her younger sisters in a house that barely held together. No running water. No safety net. When her mother eventually returned and life began to stabilize, Tiana had already lived a version of adulthood most children never touch. At 17, she found out she was pregnant. By then, her sisters were older, and her mother was stable enough to manage. So Tiana left, planning to raise her daughter on her own. It didn't go cleanly. A family dispute spiraled into an arrest. Juvenile detention. A short stay, but long enough to change everything. When she was released, she was still 17. Pregnant. Alone. No home to return to. She kept going anyway. She built a life piece by piece. Found work. Found stability. Gave her daughter, Kanaya, something she never had, a childhood that felt safe. Until one night nearly erased it all. She talked about strength like it was something you practice, not something you're born with. In court, Tiana explains why testifying matters to her. This wasn't about facing a monster. It was about refusing to hand him control again. She tells herself she can do this. That looking at him doesn't mean giving anything back. That facts are enough. Jason Dalton appears from another room, separated by a screen. On camera, he leans into the performance. Calm one moment, unstable the next. His legal team pushes the insanity argument as hard as they can. The goal is simple. Break her before she finishes. The prosecutor brings her back in. Ms. Carruthers, are you ready to proceed? She says yes. She describes the approach, the vehicle, the U-turn, the gun coming out. She talks about how fast it happened, how there wasn't time to think, only to move. She tells the children to run, tells them not to come back, yells to the other kids on the playground to scatter. The questions come carefully. You saw the gun? Yes. You knew he was aiming at you? Yes. She explains that she wasn't thinking about herself. Not even for a second. Only about the kids. Then the prosecutor asks what it felt like when the shooting started. The room changes. Her voice cracks. The memory pulls her under. The weight of Abby Koff. The 6 people who died. The children who might have. It all rushes back at once. She apologizes. Tries to breathe. No one rushed her. That silence mattered. Behind the screen, Jason shifts in his chair. Fidgets. Watches. She keeps talking anyway. Her testimony lands where nothing else has. It strips away the story he's been telling. After the hearing, the act falls apart. The erratic behavior stops. The demon story disappears. The experts weigh in. Every evaluation reaches the same conclusion. He knew what he was doing. He was aware. He was sane. With nowhere left to hide, Jason requests a plea hearing. He answers plainly when the judge asks if he's acting of his own free will. Yes. How do you plead? Guilty. Later, Tiana speaks directly. Not loudly. Not theatrically. Just steady. You tried to kill us. You failed. I'm standing here. No pause. No fear. That wasn't about anger. It was about ending it. Jason Dalton is sentenced to life in prison without parole. And then there's Abby. Months after the shooting, her recovery is slow, uneven, hard. Doctors test reflexes. Ask simple questions. Count softly. 1, 2, 3. She waves. Abby talks about waking up to her mother crying. Happy tears. The kind that don't make sense until later. She remembers her mom sitting beside her bed through the coma. Waiting. She almost died. But she didn't. And for the first time since that night, the story moves forward, not toward violence, but toward survival. You can go outside now. That's what they tell Abby when the doctors are confident she won't fall. When her balance holds. When the ground feels real again. Recovery doesn't come quickly. It isn't one moment. It's hundreds of small ones. Learning how to move. How to focus. How to trust her body to do what it used to do without asking. Physically, she improves faster than anyone expects. Mentally, it's harder. The bullet damaged her memory. Whole stretches of time are missing. Not blurred. Gone. A few weeks in, she finally asks the question. What happened to me? Her mother doesn't soften it. She walks into the room, sits down, and tells her the truth. That she was shot in the head. That the bullet shattered her skull. Abby cries. Then she goes quiet. A couple of hours later, she asks again. What happened to me? And the answer has to be given all over again, because it doesn't stay. It wasn't like forgetting once. It kept resetting. For months, every day begins the same way. Abby has to be reminded of the shooting. And every time, she also has to be told about Barbara. About the woman who shielded her. About the reason she's alive. When she finally understands that Barbara didn't survive, it hits her all at once. She asks why it had to be her. Why it had to be Grandma Barb. She knows, even through the gaps in her memory, that neither of them deserved it. She knows she's alive because someone else chose to take the bullets instead. She misses her every day. Still, Abby keeps going. In 2019, just 2 months after Jason Dalton is convicted, she goes to prom. Not as a statement, not as a symbol, just as a teenager who wants to dance and feel normal for a night. When the case finally ends, Barbara's family is able to grieve in their own way. Her niece, Laura Hawthorne, remembers something Barbara always wanted to do. She takes Barbara's ashes to Sedona. She rides in a hot air balloon, and she lets the desert take her, right where she wanted to be. It felt peaceful, like closing something gently. Jason Dalton caused damage that can't be undone. Lives were taken. Families were changed forever. But he didn't get the ending he wanted. It took years, but Tiana heals. Abby heals. And the families who lost loved ones stop letting the story be reduced to how it ended. They speak about who those people were before a gunman entered their lives. Not victims. People. Tiana never embraced the word hero. She says she did what any mother would do. She doesn't know if her own mother could have. She doesn't spend time on that question. What matters is who she became. A childhood spent raising her sisters. A pregnancy at 17. Building a life from nothing. Standing in front of a gun to protect children. Surviving 4 bullets. None of it erased her identity. She says being shot doesn't define her. Surviving doesn't either. What defines her is choosing to keep going. Now she speaks publicly. Not about violence. About resilience. About refusing to be reduced to the worst thing that ever happened to you. Life can be heavy, she says. It can start unfair. But where you begin isn't where you have to stop. And if she had to do it again, she would. Without hesitation. That's where we'll stop. All the stories you came here for have been told. If you're listening late, take a moment to let the room around you come back into focus. These stories don't ask you to carry them any longer than this. Thank you for spending part of your night with me. Take care, and rest when you're ready.